Welcome, 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 ladies and gentlemen, to another movie commentary. This time, just on a whim, I guess, we decided to do Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice. And we are, in fact, doing the Ultimate Edition, just so no one can complain. We're doing all 3 hours. And, this is going to be interesting. This will have been, I think, the first time I've watched this movie in a long while. I watched the Ultimate Edition when it first dropped, and I think that was the last time I sat down with this film. This will be like my third time watching it, period. But yeah, I'm interested to see how we end up feeling coming out of this, and if anyone wants to like join us, either watch along or just listen to this on their own. If you do want to watch along, then get your copy of the movie to timestamp 0, and once we count down, then we'll unpause and begin together. So if there's no further ado to be had, then we can unpause in 3, 2, 1. So, like I said, this is my first time sitting down with this movie in a while. How often have you like watched this movie all the way through? When was the last time you did it, I guess?
I've rewatched Captain Logan and Eric's commentary on this movie when they did Batmania. Um, about twice, maybe three times.
Mm.
So yeah, that's my last experience sitting down with this movie.
And I don't know, like
And
I might as well just start this off by saying that like we're doing the Ultimate Edition. I've always been in the camp that's never really felt a tangible difference between the Ultimate Edition and the theatrical cut. I say that having only seen the theatrical cut one time, but I remember watching this extended cut for the first time being like, "Oh, well that really wasn't significantly different."
no, it adds more context to that whole scene at the beginning when they're in, I don't want to say Afghanistan or but like some terrorist country.
That's
And
Africa, I think, isn't it?
I don't know, I don't remember. It doesn't matter. Um, that whole scene with the terrorists and Lois Lane and Superman shows up and kills that guy, even though we're gonna act like he didn't kill that guy. But yeah, it adds more context to that. It gives us more Clark Kent, which was like severely missing from the theatrical cut of this movie. I remember feeling like Superman was barely in this, like to the extent, especially since he's so monosyllabic, like to the point where he's not even a real character.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate because we both planned to rewatch Man of Steel in preparation for this. You didn't end up doing it, but I did rewatch Man of Steel, and I feel like I have a similar problem with Clark in both movies, which is that like there are moments where I come so close to caring about him, and then they're just never capitalized on, and they feel like throwaway little bits. And throughout the bulk of the movie, I just have no idea who this guy is, what his values are, what his likes and dislikes are. The only relationship he has that feels meaningful is with Lois or with his mom, and it's just not a lot. There's not enough to this guy to be a compelling protagonist, and it's really unfortunate.
Yeah, I think it's because all the way around across the board, like we don't have a good script for Man of Steel, and certainly not this movie. Um,
Yeah.
this is more watchable than Man of Steel, but as hollow and as shallow as it is, that's mostly only because Batman's in it.
And like this movie,
Um,
it's not like Clark is the only one. This movie is not great across the
yeah,
board.
Batman himself is not great in this movie. Like no character is. Like the script all around for this movie is kind of garbage.
Yeah, I do like this bit
And I do want to,
more though.
yeah, Hans Zimmer's score for a lot of this movie is really solid. Um, and I gotta say, that like I was super hyped for this movie. The first time I went to San Diego Comic Con back in 2013, like I was there in Hall H when they announced this movie was being made.
Wow.
And the hype and the excitement was palpable. it was indescribable. Like it was like the Thor showing up at Wakanda, like everybody showing up with the portal scene at Endgame. It was that moment for DC fans to find out that Superman and Batman were finally going to be putting a movie together.
Yeah, and especially since they've been trying to get a movie with the two of them off the ground for several decades. Like I want to say the earliest they had planned for like a Batman and Superman meet each other movie was 2001, like late 90s, and then finally like here it is, it's happening. And then I remember Eden and I, because Eden and I saw this together in theaters, we didn't love Man of Steel. We really didn't care for most of Zack Snyder's filmography already, and we were sort of like hyping ourselves up as like, okay, like we have faith that this is going to be a good movie. It's like bring it on, and then it's just really disappointing to just see it through the movie and have it slowly not meet those expectations.
And I was at boot camp when this movie came out. I left for boot camp before this movie came out, and like it came out while we were in boot camp, and our instructors, RDCs, they came in and were like, "We got to see Batman v Superman for you guys, ha ha." Like a few of them, I didn't hear spoilers, but a few people in my division were pissed because the RDCs were like throwing spoilers in their face. Um, and then I leave boot camp and finally see this movie. Um, and it was actually the same that I saw Civil War. Um, I saw the movie and I was like, this what they were bragging about?
Mm.
Like they would not, and even like well after that, because it came out like in the middle of my boot camp, they kept bragging about it the entire time after they saw it, and I was like, this is what they were bragging about. This is what they wouldn't shut up about.
And like
Like
I don't want to
this was
be mean to people who did really enjoy this movie, but it's just not. This is not the kind of thing that I would lord over somebody.
like as much as people complain about the repetitiveness and the predictability of the Marvel movies, by and large, those are good stories. Like they actually tell coherent stories. They're good. They're interesting. They're fun to watch. Um,
If
this
nothing
is
else,
none of that.
if nothing else, the Marvel movies consistently get you to be invested in the characters, and this movie just. Also,
Nope, I don't.
dumb, stupid thing that everyone like talked about after this movie comes out. Bruce calls his buddy Jack, is like, "Hey, leave the building." And he hasn't already left, and the thing is, the gravity thing is already destroying everything. Why is he still there to begin with?
But this right here is the best moment in the entire movie. I think. Um, I thought this was so smart to like have the collateral damage from Man of Steel done as like a 9/11 like ground zero type thing, and to get it from Bruce's perspective, and like it because it feels like actually taking um the criticism of Man of Steel as constructive, and they're like, okay, we're gonna actually build a story around that, and really tackle that. And after this scene, like it is very clear that Zack Snyder and the writers did not really understand the criticisms of Man of Steel beyond just surface level stuff, which is why towards the end of this movie they're like, yeah, we're going to a port and it's abandoned. We're going to proceed to do the same kind of insane levels of destruction that we did in the last movie.
Yeah, and it really, because we were talking about this off mic. Just it's not even. It is the fact that like there's civilian casualties and it's really unfortunate and like really odd that you would have that in a Superman movie, but it's also just visually it's overwhelming and it's kind of not great to look at. And we do the exact same thing, which is like as an action scene, it kind of takes you out of it because it's just constantly assaulting you with stuff.
Yeah. But this is great. Like to have Bruce Wayne like charge in head first into that into that debris, and to be helping out citizens before we see him as Batman. Like, this is great stuff. And of course, like, we all know how vitriolic fans were about Ben Affleck's casting when they first found out he was cast. And honestly, I feel so bad for this man because he was so hesitant and adamant about taking this role after doing Daredevil, and
Uh,
how much hatred and he's gotten as that character, and he's really embarrassed to even talk about it whenever people bring up that movie in interviews. But this guy is a genuinely talented storyteller and a talented actor, and he took a chance on it. Um, but because they didn't have a script to back him up, um, his run as Batman was unfortunately really they really did him dirty. Like, he's a great actor. He's not the problem, and even some like most reasonable people will say like he was not the problem. He's actually one of the best things about this movie, performance wise. Like, he is giving it his all, and he could have been like our best Batman if he had a remotely decent script to work with.
yeah. And like I get the sense watching him that he maybe sees something in the script to work with that someone else wouldn't, because it's like he on the page there is like a specific characterization for Bruce Wayne that we're doing, and I get the sense that like Ben Affleck sees that and is trying to like really sell that version the best that he can. But the problem is it's really it's it's not even that there's no character for him to work with. It's just you can argue it's not Batman, but also we're really inconsistent about a lot of things over the course of this movie, and it seems like the script doesn't know what it's doing half the time. Like, it'll have him say and do things and then either act like that hasn't happened or like it means something completely different to what it means.
Yeah, Zack Snyder, he is. I always say this. He's got the eye for the iconography and cinematography. Um, like, a lot of his movies look really good, but he's focused on is visuals, and he is just not a good storyteller.
Yeah. And some people will make the argument film is a visual medium. You can use visuals as the primary means of telling your story. But the thing is,
It's not like he's doing that though.
yeah, if because Captain Logan like mentioned if he wanted to do like the equivalent of Fleischer cartoons, it was just dialogue free, then maybe we would have something. But he's pairing his visuals up with a script and characterization and dialogue that are just at odds with each other. I almost think Zack Snyder could make a really, really good movie that just has no words in it because he can't seem to like keep his visuals in line with what's being said.
And he's obsessed with Dark Knight Returns, but all he's doing is copying the iconography, not actually apparently tackling any of the themes associated with that story whatsoever.
Yeah.
Like, that's not a story he clearly understands. It doesn't even feel like he even read it. He just opened the book, looked at the pictures, saw that he Superman fights Batman, and then is like, "Ooh, cool! Let's just throw some of this imagery in the movie."
Yeah, well, I mean, this is the guy who claimed that Batman was like killing people left and right in that book and that he didn't kill anyone in either of the Tim Burton movies. So, how much attention he's paying at any particular point, Batman related, I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's painful. This whole scene in general was pretty painful. Um, why do we introduce Jimmy Olsen only to kill him here? And
Apparently, Zach thought it would be fun. Deep, beleaguered sigh. I'm really not sure because there's a lot of hearsay. There's a lot of, oh, Jesse Eisenberg was initially meant to be Jimmy Olsen and he like patterned his performance off Max Landis. and they thought it would be funny if they killed him. And like, I don't know how much of what is true, but Zack himself like came out and said we thought it would be a bit of fun if we brought in Jimmy Olsen for like a brief role just to kill him. And like, why? And this is in a thing where it's like this is part of just Zack not getting Superman, where he seems kind of allergic to Superman's supporting cast in general, where we have like Emil Hamilton in a small role in Man of Steel, and then he's dead. Like we have the Guardian briefly, and then he's dead. And like a lot of characters who are like in Superman's like personal circle who you would hope that they would get the chance to be taken advantage of in a solo Superman movie, I just kind of brought in and then tossed aside like it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, like it's very clear um that he doesn't like this is Zack Snyder clearly is not a fan of Superman.
Yeah, no.
Um Captain Logan talks about the whole Ansliman thing of uh, make man cool versus he's already cool. Let's just tell a cool story with him.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I'm not going to sit here and call myself a fan of the character because I'm not, but I've liked him in stuff. I've really liked him in the Justice League cartoon and the extension of that Justice League Unlimited. Um, see why you can't handle that character well in that regard. Like, why is he so monosyllabic? Why does he have no real trackable character arc? Why are the Kents not the Kents? If you know what I mean,
Yeah.
like the reason Superman is such a good person and has such a love for the human race and saving people is because that kind of love and care for humanity is instilled in him because of who raised him. That's Superman's whole thing. But the kids being like, "Nah, you shouldn't save people," and like that doesn't work. That's not.
And
It,
this
it's like
this is a problem just because like Superman, like Clark hasn't even shown up yet. We're already like a good 15 minutes into this movie, and I agree that
we're
the
gonna
opening.
blame Superman for what happens here when these people are getting bullets and people really think Superman just showed up and brought a gun.
And see, like, I'm not even sure that's what the movie wants us to take away from it. Like, we make this complaint all the time, but it's just,
Yeah, we use torches and blow them up, but even then, that's not what his laser eyes would do. It would just cut them apart.
yeah, well,
It
see,
wouldn't
what I'm talking
scorch
about,
them.
what I'm talking about is like the point you're making and the point that like we hear made all the time is that like it doesn't make any sense that when we get in front of like the Senate and stuff, they would blame Superman for this. I'm not even sure that that's what the movie wants us to think is happening. And it's just that this whole thing is so needlessly like complicated and like this is Lex Luthor's plan in general. It's just too many steps, no reason to be this complex. I think that when we get in front of the Senate, they're like, we don't think Superman killed those people specifically. We just don't like that he showed up and like escalated the situation. And just, I think that's what the movie wants it to be, but it's so easy to think otherwise because they're not clear about anything. And there's too many unnecessary moving parts like throughout this whole film. It's like, what do you want us to think about any of this? And see, this is to this day, I hear people argue that this guy's still alive, even though Clark pelted him through at least 3 brick walls. And it's it's ridiculous. Like the excuses that people make for this scene, because the fact that Clark does this immediately undercuts the argument of like, oh, he had to kill Zod in order to learn like that it wasn't right to kill people. Like he needed that moment to grow into Superman as we know him. His first action in this movie is to kill someone. And like a lot of people just can't accept that because they were banking so hard on the murder of Zod being meaningful and it just wasn't.
Yeah, it wasn't. It was clearly just and they talk about it like something they just came up with a minute because it wasn't even original script as far as I can tell from interviews I've seen with David. God, what's his last name? He's written on the Nolan trilogy.
Goyer?
Um, yeah, Goyer. We are talking about that. He's like, yeah, it's just we kind of just threw that in at the end. Like
Mm.
that was a really last minute decision.
Which it really sucks because I feel bad for the people who like look to this movie and Man of Steel and like either do or try to really read this sort of deep storytelling in it when it's just like I get it, death of the author, once the film is out and in the public, then it doesn't really matter what the intent was or what the creators have to say about it if you read specific things into it. But it seems like Zack Snyder and Goyer and all these people are making decisions not with story in mind, and it really sucks that so many people are looking to these movies and looking to Snyder as like this god of storytelling and trying to read all this
Yeah,
stuff into it when it's just not there for them.
it's not like there's all these like that whole back and forth or that whole speech and then what she just said. Like those are ultimately just really sophisticated sounding platitudes. This movie's chocked full of, but none of that is actually coherent, or even feels like real people talking.
Yeah. And it sucks
It's just
because
the movie being really self-important and pretentious.
yeah, and like it sucks because there is a decent idea there where like Movie Bob has his sort of infamous like 3+ hour long dissection of this movie where he points out that like there is an interesting Superman story in this scenario of like often and like in Dark Knight Returns, Superman will be this representation of sort of America and the military industrial complex. And what we have here is a situation like America's done more than once now of this foreign conflict. Superman shows up specifically to fix this one thing that he's concerned about, and that's Lois. And then he just leaves, and the conflict is still going, and he didn't really help, and someone could take him to task for that. That is actually an interesting idea, but we don't do anything with it because we decide that it's just part of Lex Luthor's plan. And again, it's this needless like desire to make Lex this super genius pulling all the strings, and every single plot point is somehow related to Lex, and it doesn't really let the story be about Clark or his decisions at all.
This is pretty cool, treating Batman uh, almost like a horror movie villain.
Yeah. And like this is all the stuff we do to like establish how far gone Bruce is, I think works fairly well. And it's just like this is a Batman who's not really okayed by anybody but himself. This is not Batman like who works with the police. This is not a Batman who like is mainly the fear of just criminals. Like everyone's scared of this Batman because he's just gone kind of insane.
Which is certainly a different take than Returns, because Returns, even when he comes back, like there's that rookie cop that tries to take him in. And the cop has been on the force for a while. He's like, "Yeah, put the gun down, kid. It's Batman. It's good. Like he's on."
And the branding is weird
It's
because
weird, and I don't know why that's even here.
yeah,
Maybe it's here to illustrate that, like, illustrate that he, like it. I don't even know. I don't honestly like that's not even explain. Like you'd have to stretch and literally make something up to explain the branding.
yeah, and it's because we're gonna once again, like I said, because everything in this movie ties back to Lex, and like I'll get into why that's a problem later. With in the theatrical cut, we're sort of left a little vague as to what the exact situation is. We know that once a criminal gets in prison with the Bat brand, then they get killed in prison by other prisoners. And Bruce seems to be aware of this and just doesn't care. So he deliberately like brands people as a death sentence. This movie makes it even, I mean, this cut makes it even more strange and vague because like we know that it's Luthor pays directly to have someone like shank people with the brand in prison. So Luthor like orchestrates that specifically to get at Clark, which then just makes me wonder, okay, how long has Bruce been doing this? How long has it been leading to people getting killed? Does he care? If he's aware of it, why does he keep doing it?
Like, I mean, we all know that Batman, at least traditionally, is supposed to be a character that has a no kill rule. Um, but him giving himself the out of like enticing other criminals to kill people he puts in jail is still not Batman.
Yeah. And that's one of the minor ways that this is an improvement over the theatrical, at least, I suppose, because it's still creating problems. But in the theatrical cut, you have this thing of like, why? What is it about having the Bat brand that will entice other criminals to kill you? Is it just that, like, the brand means you did something really unconscionable and the prisoners will kill you? That doesn't sound like a thing that would happen.
Um, there's a hilarious cut of a video. I can't remember what it is, um, but I think it's a review of this movie, or maybe yeah, I think it's a review of this movie where it's like Superman says, "I didn't kill the right here. I didn't kill those people if that's what they think." And then it cuts to him plowing that guy through a dozen walls.
Yeah, see, and it's like, I don't understand how, because, like, the thing that Captain Logan says is, like, Zack Snyder's directing music videos, and, like, you just have to turn your brain off for the music videos because they don't match up with anything that's in the dialogue. And I don't understand how you, as a singular person, can film that scene and then film this scene and be like, yep, these make sense as part of the same movie.
It's like he's not even watching his own movie. And like, okay, well, this is like the most weird, kind of cringy,
Don't,
uh,
he didn't even take
PG-13
off his
section. Like
shoes. He didn't
he
even
just hopped. Like he can't even be bothered to take his shirt off before. And you figured that'd be like the really gratuitous like Twilight thing that we do, especially with Superman, because he's jacked. Well, we do it here in the extended edition, yeah. But this is such a weird, cringy PG-13 sex scene.
Yeah, and it feels really insidious from like a character standpoint because Lois is raising all the good questions, and like part of the problem with Clark in this movie isn't just that like it's hard to pin down what his character is. It's that a lot of the characterization we do get makes him seem really self-interested and like not the best person, and you don't want that to be your Superman, where it's like he comes in and the woman he loves is asking him like genuine questions, is like, maybe you didn't handle that situation in the best way, and he's just like, I don't care, let's make out. And it feels like he's actively distracting her because he just doesn't want to have to deal with that. It's like that's a really scummy move.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, it feels like they don't know how to write Superman anyway, so they just have him say as little as possible.
Yeah, and it's like his conflict throughout this movie, like distinct from the Batman stuff, is people don't appreciate me enough. Is it worth it that I keep doing this if people are going to keep questioning my actions? And it's a carryover from the really problematic scene at the end of Man of Steel, where after he's saved the world from Zod, he crashes a military satellite like 5 feet from a military jeep, and he's like, stop spying on me. You just have to trust that I have your best interests at heart and just let me do my thing unimpeded. And it's like, Zack Snyder clearly does not recognize how terrifying that is, to have a guy who's basically all powerful and who no one can actually do anything to stop be like, no, I'm not going to cooperate with you. You cooperate with me. Like everyone lets me do my thing, and I'll like make sure everyone else is safe. If anyone tries to in what is impose any kind of checks and balances, it's like Clark gets entitled and is like, no. It's like throughout this movie, he's going to be saving people and he's going to be miserable while he does it, just because everyone is questioning him still. And I think that more than anything else is like fundamentally the mischaracterization of Superman here. Superman is a guy who should get fulfillment out of helping people, and this Clark gets no satisfaction from just helping for helping's sake, and that's real not Clark Kent.
Okay, I just want to get this out of the way since we're now on our introduction to Lex Luthor. Um, Jesse Eisenberg is woefully miscast. I really like him a lot as an actor, but he's very much kind of a Keanu Reeves actor. Like he does a very specific thing. He doesn't particularly have a lot of range, which is fine. He's very good at what he does, but even like this character is not Lex Luthor, and even if you're going for a very different and original interpretation, um, he's not compelling. His plan is completely incoherent and makes no sense.
I'm just unsure why he's like this, because I think Jesse Eisenberg could play a decent Lex Luthor, and even a decent Lex Luthor in a movie with this tone. But I don't know if it was his decision or Snyder's decision or what. I don't know how true the like mimicking Max Landis like part of it is, but why is he like so committed to this bit? It's really strange. Like I don't think the problem is him as an actor. I think the problem is this choice and whoever said, "Yeah, this is what we're going to do throughout the whole movie." And like his
I
because
know everyone was saying this well before this movie was even cast, but I would have been much more comfortable with a traditional like Bryan Cranston, Lex Luthor. That would have felt a lot. It would have felt a lot better.
yeah. And you know what
This
this feels
guy's
like
just
to me? This almost feels like the same thing as the like collateral damage thing, where they're addressing on a very surface level a complaint with Man of Steel, where people are like, that movie doesn't have enough levity. And like, okay, let's add some levity. Let's make one of our three main characters a total cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs crazy person. It's like that's not what we meant.
yeah, like Batman Begins has levity. The Dark Knight has levity, and I'm not talking about just Joker. Like when Bruce crashes into that car to save Gordon, he's like, "Oh, what? What's going on?" Like acting all oblivious and stuff. Like even those movies, as serious and grounded as they are, have levity.
And Lex's theme is so over the top, and I like it. It's goofy.
It's hilariously goofy. It fits this Lex Luthor for sure.
Dun, dun,
Boom, dun,
dun.
bang, dun,
It's
bang.
it's great. But
It's
yeah, no,
so good.
like naturally, and we brought this up in the Civil War commentary. This movie and Civil War come out pretty close together. They do have a lot of
Yeah.
similarities from a plot perspective, and like in the sort of shallow, like fanboy, like back and forth that occurred comparing this movie to that movie, you saw a lot of comparisons between Luthor and Zemo. Is like they're these two guys without powers who like orchestrate all these events, but really, and like I don't want to do like the typical like, oh, Marvel did this better thing to it, but you look at Zemo in Civil War and he orchestrates a couple of things, and it's not like he's literally pulling every single string and every single character decision across the story has to do with him. Zemo like sets very specific events in motion, and then his plan does rely a lot on luck. And this movie suffers from a thing that way too many movies suffer from, which is our villain has to be the puppet master. They have to be behind literally everything. Not a single plot point in this movie happens that isn't Luthor's direct doing in some way. And that's just too much. That robs anyone else in this movie of any agency. They're all just literally pawns in Luthor's game until the last 20 or 30 minutes.
We give Superman this look there, like, he's not happy about what's going on. Um, why don't we have him talk about this stuff like at all?
Yeah,
And even when we get to the Senate hearing, he's still monosyllabic as a block of wood. Like, he's not talking.
so much of this movie could have been fixed if we'd gotten Clark to speak about anything. Because the way, like my problem that I mentioned, which is just that Clark's just like put off because no one is appreciating him enough. And he's like, why do I even do this if I'm not going to get any glory or satisfaction out of it or trust out of it? And it's like, that problem could have been solved if you just clarified that that's not what he's really thinking. Because when you just
Like,
see
I don't
him,
buy that.
sorry, I
Oh,
was just
sorry to cut you off.
when you
I
see him
don't
just look at like the TV and he's all like sad or mad about it. I don't know what else I'm supposed to think.
like, and given like how like we're presenting public opinion about Superman, I don't buy that this statue even exists.
Who put this here? I
Yeah, I don't buy that. Given how the public currently feels about the man, and this can't be that long after Man of Steel, um, I don't buy that statue even exists, or that they were even able to rebuild as much of the city as they have.
yeah, like it's been because we open with the attack on Metropolis. We skip 18 months, and then if I'm right, we skip another period of some months at some point without ever being told. So it's at most 2 years, like at max, since the end of Man of Steel. There should still be like half of that city gone, just nothing but scaffolding everywhere. Also,
And it
very
was beyond goofy to put like Gotham City across the freaking harbor from Metropolis.
yeah, and see, like the problem with that isn't even that it's a dumb idea in principle. Like on its
It
own,
kind of is.
I
It very much is, especially since like Batman's dealing with the most crime-ridden city, like one of the most crime-ridden cities in the world. Um, if Superman is right across the harbor, why is he not dealing with any of that?
yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. If this movie was in any way about that, that would be interesting. Because the thing about this movie is, and part of this is, I feel like maybe part of this isn't even this movie's fault so much as it is the marketing, and again coming out as close as it does to Civil War, because Civil War is a movie that's very much about like our two sides have disagreements, both personal and political, and those are informing like the actions that they take over the course of the story. And the second trailer for this movie comes out and is like, we center the majority of it on that scene where Clark and Bruce meet at the party, and they're like, "Oh well, I dislike Superman for this reason, and I dislike Batman for this reason." This movie's not about that at all. This movie isn't even close to anywhere near being about like the two of them having a problem with each other's methodologies or belief systems at all. If we'd made it more about that, that would have been interesting. So if we have a movie where Batman is like, not only is Superman dangerous, but when he does help out, he just helps out in Metropolis. He doesn't even come over to Gotham where we could use his help. Like, clearly, he's not a great guy. That could be an interesting angle.
I like Bruce giving advice to that fighter.
Yeah.
That's a really cool little character moment. Um, and that whole scene that we got with Clark actually doing some journalism investigating stuff that wasn't in the theatrical cut. Um, it still doesn't amount to much, but I'm glad that that's somewhere in this movie.
Yeah, and it's interesting that we have that lady who's like the only people who hate Batman are the people who have like reason to hate him or to like be scared of him. And I wish we'd had more of that. I wish we really did have more of a sense of like what the whole
What people think of him.
yeah.
Yeah, because like we keep showing the public opinion of Superman. It's a little strange that we're not doing that with Batman, considering that he's branding people, and the movie clearly wants you to feel some way about that.
Yeah. And like this is odd. I mean, first of all, Perry White, you're not supposed to like give your staffers like headlines. They're supposed to make the headlines, but anyway, we've got this whole thing where Perry White is like, we're trying to sell more papers. And so like maybe instead of having Clark write about the football game, it would be a good idea if he did write about the bat dressed vigilante who's murking people like in your reader's backyard. Like if
This whole bullet subplot, I could care less about.
I don't understand why this is here at all. It's like we're desperate to give Lois something to do because she was a major part of Man of Steel. And even in Man of Steel, the things that we give her to do are very contrived and feel very desperate. Honestly, I feel like they should just cut their losses and like significantly reduce her role if they have no real substantive thing for her to contribute to the story.
And it's a shame because, like a lot of people in this cast, she's great.
Mhm.
Um, but like this script is nothing, and they have nothing solid for anyone to do really. Um, like we gave Clark some investigative journalism to do, and that was kind of nice, but doesn't amount to enough. And like we don't have a solid handle on any character in this movie character wise, except maybe Alfred. And
Yeah.
even then, like I would like to know exactly how he feels about the branding thing, because even that I'm not entirely sure about. Because the rage, the feeling of powerlessness, and like that whole weird platitude he goes on about, I'm not even sure what that ultimately means, other than like you're going too far, I guess.
Yeah, like that's a good point that comes up sometimes, which is like typically we'll characterize Alfred as like the guy who holds Bruce to a certain standard and who's like there to pull him back from the deep end when no one else is. But like here, he seems to be aware that Bruce has fully gone off the deep end and he just keeps going. Like I don't want to like maybe because Nolan had already done this so recently, but like in The Dark Knight Rises, we've got Alfred going like, "This is too much. I'm gonna bail. Like I cannot support you doing this anymore. You're gonna destroy yourself." And here we've got an Alfred who doesn't seem like he has any objections with Bruce like sending people to their deaths, if not just outright killing them. So like that's unfortunate. That's not great characterization.
And, yeah, and you got to think that he knows about that. And I know they have conversations in this movie, but I can't remember the specifics.
Well, he throws down the newspaper that's like, the Bat Brand got somebody killed in the prison, and he's like, new rules. And Bruce is just like, the criminals are like weeds, Alfred. You get rid of one, and like more come up in its place. And like, I feel like Alfred should have a much stronger reaction to what's happening right now.
He
And
definitely should, especially since Bruce is so ambivalent about that.
and also
That
the constant drinking.
like that's an interesting thing. And that's something we did a lot with Tony Stark in the comics. We gave him a whole arc about substance abuse. Um, I do like making Batman super flawed in that way. That can only go so far though, because like he can only do that so much before you're even able to buy that he still is able to go out and operate and function as well as he does.
Hmm.
But maybe he's only doing it when he's back at the Batcave. Um, like, but still, like, you can only push that kind of thing so far. But I do like making this version of Batman super flawed. I think that's an interesting way to go. Um, People thought this hallucination coming up was Man Bat, and I'm like, really, guys? It's just a dream.
See, this like thing that some people have, and like I partially blame like the Marvel Cinematic Universe for doing this, but I also just blame people being simple. Where it's like now everything that looks like it could remotely be a comic reference has to be some kind of like wider universe reference or some kind of foreshadowing. It's like, no, guys, sometimes symbolism is just symbolism for the sake of this story. It's like sometimes I think people just, and I don't want to be like really pretentious about it, but sometimes I think people just watch movies incorrectly, where they're not treating this movie like its own thing and like to its detriment and to its betterment. Where it's like the excuses that people will make for certain scenes in this movie will be like, oh, but it was a reference to something that's coming up later, or it was foreshadowing to the next movie. It's like, okay, but this is a feature film that you sat down and watched. What about that as part of this story? And they just don't care about it on that level. I'm like, how do you watch movies?
I do like that we just see a girl in his bed and that we don't give Batman another love interest in this movie. This movie's already trying to juggle a lot. Um, some plot lines that seem completely pointless and others that are really hackneyed and convoluted, and like this movie already has way too much going on to give Bruce a love interest anyway. Um, and he's kind of not stable enough to even have one, so I like that we don't even entertain that idea.
Yeah, he really couldn't make it work with anyone, I don't think.
And the suit, this is a great segue to talk about the suit. Um, like best suit we've had on screen so far. It
Great.
looks phenomenal. They've tweaked. They finally figured out how to make the cowl to where he can turn his neck. Um, it looks beautiful. I don't like how they tinkered with it in Justice League. It looks like really like the cowl particularly makes him look a little like significantly goofier.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, this costume is perfect. I love it.
And then there's
Um,
the Robin suit, and like this is a thing that I've gotten into arguments with people over. This is exactly what I'm talking about, where that that visual by itself on screen for like 3 seconds does not have the story impact that Snyder wants it to have. Where clearly what we're supposed to get from that is Joker's killed Robin at some point in the past, and that's contributed to Bruce's like mental deterioration.
Downward spiral.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, just showing that suit with that graffiti on it is not enough in the context of this movie to convey that to us. Especially since with the coloring being the way it is, it's not immediately obvious that that's even a Robin suit. Where it's like,
And
if
well, even worse than that, you're just doing a nod to comic book fans, and the vast majority of your honest doesn't know what the heck that is.
yes, I believe I told you this already. I watched this movie with my mom and dad. I paused it on that frame and I'm like, and keep in mind, my mom has watched Batman Under the Red Hood, so she knows about the whole Jason Todd thing. And so I asked her, "Mom, look at this suit. What do you think that this means?" And she just couldn't answer because the movie just doesn't do enough to tell you what the heck that's supposed to be.
Yeah, the costume is so dilapidated and worn out and completely washed of any real color, so you can't tell if that's a Batman or Robin suit.
Yeah, and like we don't get any other reference to it, so we never like know that this Bruce ever had a sidekick. So like this is supposed to be allegedly a really important thing to establish for the audience, and you're just not doing a great job.
I think the best thing that Zack Snyder has contributed to the DCU franchise since he started it um, was definitely the casting of Gal Gadot. 'Cause we talked over her initial entrance into the movie just now. She is a very, very inspired and unconventional choice. She doesn't have like like the most Oscar worthy like resume, you know, like she's been in some Fast and Furious movies, um, and was mostly a secondary character. Didn't have a real arc. Was kind of just there to look cute and give a few one liners here and there, and be the like really strong, stalwart woman that's a part of the team. And she comes in and she doesn't exactly. She's not given anything to blow you away in this movie. But when we finally get to her movie, she knocked it out of the park.
Yeah. And it's really unfortunate because I really, really love her movie a lot, but there's just nothing for her here. And it's like, I honestly think you not only could cut Wonder Woman out of this movie, I think they should have cut her out of this movie. She just, I don't think this story is helped at all by her presence. And I was going to mention, like, in our introduction scene with Luthor, he brings up the existence of other metahumans. And, like, clearly, like, the mission statement going into this movie, like, into production is we're setting up our own universe. This is our take two after Green Lantern failed. Man of Steel was its own thing. This is really what's going to launch us into. Now we're making DC Universe movies. So let's introduce some new heroes. Let's have the villain be kind of preoccupied with other characters who will spin off eventually. But just for the story of this film, I don't see what of worth Wonder Woman adds. I don't think any of her scenes are remotely compelling. I think you could very easily take her out and lose nothing.
Um, I agree with you wholeheartedly there. Um, and again, I do I do think it was like because like you think of Wonder Woman and you know the immediate instinct is to go to someone who just looks a lot more like the comic book character, has more muscle on her. Um, and they go with Gal Gadot, and it's one of the most inspired choices I've ever seen for casting a superhero. Um, like you know that actor that you know you'd never think of to go to. Like it's not Charlie Hunnam with Green Arrow. It's not Dylan O'Brien for Spider Man. Like they go to someone that like would be on no one's fan casting list, but just shows up and kills it.
Hmm.
So I got to give him credit as far as getting her in this role, because I really don't see any other filmmaker, at least mainstream with like a name doing that. I don't see anyone else casting Gal Gadot. That's a huge leap of faith. And granted, she's mostly just set dressing in this movie, so that I think that's the big reason why he cast her. Um, like she's unexpected. You wouldn't think of her, and she's immediately pretty striking. But yeah, she's actually a really good actress.
Yeah, and like we talked
And,
over
and
on one scene, paying lip service to the idea that like we've got an interesting disagreement between Clark and Bruce that's going to go anywhere. And like I don't know, seeing that scene in the trailer and like even like Lex coming in and completely deflating it, I thought that was interesting. I thought that this sort of dynamic that we have between the three of them could be really interesting. And another unfortunate like side effect of this movie is we just don't have any of the three of them in a room together talking at all for most of it. Like Zack Snyder had that whole thing he said where he felt kind of insecure about having Batman and Superman talk to each other while in costume because he thought it would be too silly. So he made the dialogue between the two of them whenever they were in costume as sparse as possible. It's like, okay,
that's awesome.
putting aside that that by itself is dumb, and why are you making a Batman v Superman movie if you're that insecure about that kind of thing? Then
Yeah,
okay,
you're the one that's supposed to be like spearheading the formation of this universe and eventually getting us to Justice League. and you're afraid of Superman and Batman just having a conversation fully suited up. How
Yeah.
ridiculous is
And like, okay, if I accept that, then come up with more ways to have them have conversations out of costume. But they get that one and that's it. And like, especially since like Lex Luthor paired with Batman is often just as interesting as Lex Luthor paired with Superman. And in so many ways, they are ridiculously similar in this movie. Like, if anything, Lex and Bruce should be kind of like aligned together through much of this film, and they don't have any dialogue together. Once again, Bruce is just a pawn in Lex's game. So, like, the side effect of like having Snyder's sort of fear of like letting these characters just speak to each other is that everyone feels like a tool and Lex just feels like a guy using those tools.
and this is one of the worst montages I've ever seen in a superhero movie. Um, like in the extended cut, like this is all new, like the snippets of news people talking about Superman. But yeah, Superman looks so depressed saving all of these people.
I remember the discussion between like I remember this bit with Neil deGrasse Tyson being in theaters.
Like, but the constant cutting to random news anchors was not in the theatrical cut.
Mm. Yeah, and like there's an interesting thing by Maggie Mae Fish who's like currently talking through sort of like Snyder's stuff on her channel, and it's really interesting because with some slightly different framing, this could actually be a really good montage. And again, it's all about the context as to where we have to assume that Clark's face right now is like miserable because we're intercutting all this stuff of like people questioning him and like, should we trust him? And it's like, okay, take Henry Cavill's performance in a vacuum, and you could say maybe he's just feeling like naturally burdened, but he's still willing to do this anyway. And like so much of the discussion, like with Neil deGrasse Tyson, is it's not, oh, Superman is a helpful guy who's here to save people and his existence is a net good because he helps rescue people. It's all of these, like you mentioned before, like trying so hard to be lofty. Is like, oh, is he a Christ figure? Oh, his existence as an alien represents all of these things. It what would really help this movie is if we just had somebody present the perspective of like Superman is here helping people and that's good.
Yeah, like we try to make him a messianic figure with those shots, and the Jesus parallel imagery is at odds with what what the public opinion is of Superman in this movie.
Hey Malik, look, it's Batgirl. It's Barbara Gordon. It's everyone was convinced when this casting was announced that she was playing Barbara Gordon or Oracle or something. I'm like, you have literally no reason to think that. And then the extended cut comes out and she's just this random nobody made up for this movie.
Um, and since yeah, this is really problematic.
I'm
Um,
tempted to read what that article actually says.
yeah, like it says too far gone. I caught that line, and I'm
I
like,
caught, I caught
okay,
that I caught that it said that this has happened 18 times before now. So
are
this
you
is not
serious?
this is
Oh
not
yeah, I did see.
development.
Yeah, this isn't new either. And we don't really know his reasoning for doing this. And since we're gonna make a big plot point out of it, that's a real problem. Why is he branding people?
Yeah,
What is the is it that okay, like no one else involved in organized crime is gonna associate with you because you've been branded? Um, and even then, like, how are they going to? That's also not common practice to just walk you into a penitentiary with your shirt off.
this
Like
is the
that's
most
really contrived.
obnoxious thing. It's like he shows up sitting in the wheelchair and he's like, oh, there's our obligatory F bomb. and he's like, "I'm here to help you stand for something." If I was this,
Ugh,
if I was Wallace, I would just be like, "Get out of my house!"
that is so cringe. Oh God.
But yeah, no, like the big question is, why did Bruce start branding people? What was he thinking the first time he did this?
Yeah, there's got to be some message, some mission statement. Um, if you get the brand, then I'll always know where you are. I don't know. Like it's really goofy, and you need to know why your character is doing things in the story.
I like that that guy's tattoo
Especially
on his hand says iron. Yeah, and so
and since
we also have the thing of like, because we skipped 18 months and some change, like Lex Luthor has known about Bruce and Clark's identities for a while. So like he's clearly been doing this from the beginning, which, and like I don't want to get like too hung up on this because it really is just one plot point, but the implications are just so problematic because we have to assume, okay, it's been a while. It's been over a year that Lex Luthor has been like, I have a plan, and that plan is that I'm going to turn Batman and Superman against each other. At some point, Bruce decides to start branding people. You have to assume that with the first time it happens, Lex is like, all right, have some money, go kill that guy with the brand. So we really do have to assume that Bruce, for sure, just continues to brand people and he knows that it's going to get them killed. Like he has to know, and he keeps doing it. And here we are with the board again. This is such a I don't I don't I don't know what to say about this subplot beyond just why is it here?
it's just doesn't add anything. It's really tedious.
And it
Um,
makes Lex look stupid because why would you use these bullets that can only be tied to you in the first place?
it also had one of the funniest, most kind of misogynistic lines I've heard in a superhero movie,
Right,
where
yeah,
he's like,
with balls like
"What-
these
what-
do belong in here.
that's pretty funny. I'm not gonna lie, that's hilarious.
But yeah, no, this
I also really like that actor from The Blacklist. He's really good in that show.
yeah, I've seen him in a couple of things. I can never remember his name though. But like, yeah, see, this I don't buy. I don't buy that Perry is like so adamant about Clark reporting on sports when he's like, I'm trying to sell more papers. It's like a story about Batman would have to sell more papers than a story about the sports, right?
Especially because, like, no offense to the typical American, especially the one interested in sports, but let's be real. Like, most people who are hardcore into sports are not picking up a newspaper, yet alone reading it.
Yeah. Also, like John Stewart, not your A material, my guy. I really hope he didn't write that for himself because that's really not great.
I can't. Ugh,
Do you think John Stewart ever gets confused with Green Lantern John Stewart in this universe?
maybe, probably. It would be if we ever do get another proper Justice League movie. It'd be nice to get the John Stewart version.
Mm-hmm.
We
That was
we already tried Hal and it didn't work out. So
get your sword.
Gal Gadot, of course, looks really gorgeous here. I
Mm-hmm.
like her back and forth with Bruce Wayne. Um, Wonder Woman has kind of had this thing of hopping back and forth between Superman and Batman in comics. Um, and honestly, her relationship with Batman is way more interesting, just
Yeah,
because they're not on the same playing field, like objectively power wise, obviously. Like she could kill him with her bare hands, but they have this interesting rapport and respect for each other that um it's just really palpable and interesting to watch. Well, read, I should say, because I read a fair amount of their interplay in comics when they've been a couple, and
I will say
there's
watch
a
also though, because they do have a similar sort of thing in the Justice League cartoons. Like those two shows pushed them pretty hard, and it was really interesting.
yeah, that was nice, that was cool, um, and it would have like I do like some of the kind of what do you call it, the tension and animosity between them in Justice League. But I'd have to rewatch that movie again. But I remember feeling like um, there's so much more you can do with these two. Like they don't have to be a couple like they were in the comics, but I would have liked to see more of them back and forth.
Yeah. Oh no, we're here. This, I hate this.
It,
It,
yeah, we all do. Well, I don't know if we all do, but me and you definitely hate
you ever just sit in front of your loading screen and then suddenly you're in a hallucination?
this. Oh God. Um, let's talk about Darkseid. We all know he's either a Thanos ripoff or Thanos ripoff Darkseid. I can't remember which character was introduced first, but
I
clearly
wanted
one
to
is an answer
start
to the
with
other.
you first.
Okay, clearly one's an answer to the other. But and by the way, it'll be interesting. Like since we now know we're finally getting a Snyder cut for Justice League, to see if any of these ideas are actually paid off in a remotely satisfying way.
Well,
Um,
I know Darkseid is going to have some role that like they just hacked out of the theatrical version because we've got that brief little clip that's like Diana looking at the Darkseid mural, and Zack posted this thing that's like Darkseid in Steppenwolf's place during the flashback sequence, I think. So we're probably going to do something, but like you said, whether or not it's satisfying, I don't entirely trust that.
I
And
kind of highly doubt that since this Ultimate Edition of BVS isn't even remotely satisfying and still pretty incoherent and doesn't make sense scene to scene and really only has pretty solid visuals going for it
and
and a good chunk of the score.
this is like the microcosm of everything that I'm talking about, where you'll have people who look at this scene and be like, "Oh, this is the best scene in the movie," and like it's so meaningful, and like you can tell that it's part of what spurs Batman into going even more
Oh, it's
crazy.
like the Thor scene in Avengers Age of Ultron, only this is more ham-fisted and incoherent and doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it's really because that's almost an insult to that scene, because I always take up for that scene because if nothing else, it really is kind of important for Age of Ultron that the Avengers have some understanding of what the Infinity Stones are. And up to that point, none of them really have any reason in any of the movies to even comprehend what that is. So it makes perfect sense that I forgot about
Oh,
that delivery. I forgot about that face.
his no is hysterical. No!
uh, but yeah, well, like this fight is cool, but like you compare that Thor scene in Age of Ultron, like okay, Thor goes to find out what the Infinity Stones are because we are going to put an Infinity Stone in one of our characters. It's maybe important that our other characters know what that means. Fine.
All I'm
Maybe
saying is all I'm saying is with that it's set up and it's a little forced. But with this, it's well, first of all, it's set up for like a movie that we don't even really get. Like, yes, there are parademons in Justice League, but we don't see this. It's not Superman doesn't take over, he doesn't become a dictator. Like, this is not what we are actually building to.
it also
Um,
doesn't play like setup. Like if you don't know that there's a sequel coming to this movie, then this is just a complete non sequitur that contributes nothing. Especially since it's a
it,
dream.
and it's interesting to be presented with evil dictator Superman after now getting the boys and seeing that we're going to get a second season here pretty soon, and that series handles the concept of an evil Superman-esque character a lot better, infinitely better than both this or Brightburn.
Mm-hmm. And it's just like the argument from people that like you need this scene because it drives Bruce to hating Clark even more. We really did not need that. Like Bruce has already firmly decided before we even get to the proper meat of this movie that he's gonna kill Superman. This scene is not contributing to that. There's no reason to have this here. It's like all the Wonder Woman stuff. It's cool fan service, I guess, if you're into that sort of
Yeah.
thing, like the Robin costume. But if you
It's
take
just really self-indulgent.
yeah, if you take it out, the movie loses nothing. And here we just push it that one bit further. Like that scene in a vacuum was bad enough, but then to come out of it and immediately be like, "Hey, here's this other thing that's not going to be relevant to this movie. You're just going to have to wait like a year before this pans out into anything meaningful." I hate it. I hate it. Like have
And
your
unlike something like, Infinity War, where it's like that movie's fairly enjoyable if you've never seen any of the other Marvel movies, but you know, it's not holding your hand. If you're not cut up, you're not cut up. But
yeah.
with this, like literally none like no one knows what the heck is going on in that scene.
Yeah, and like Infinity War is a climax, this is supposed to be your jumping off point where
Yeah, and it's it's so incoherent and you don't know what the heck is actually going on, and we don't come back to that in Justice League at all.
it's just I feel like a lot of so many things that we've mentioned so far fall under the same problem, which is just there's so many things in this movie that do not contribute to this movie. And like people like to pretend that it does, Snyder likes to pretend that it does, but that scene, Wonder Woman, the Robin costume, like the files from LexCorp, none of it means anything to the story of this film. And like at least in Age of Ultron, the stuff in the Thor bathtub scene meant something to that movie, even if it was set up. This is like a good, I'd say, total everything up, and you've got like at least 15 to 20 minutes of this movie. Take it out, and this movie is none the lesser for it. It impacts the story zilch.
And we're doing so much of it.
And like people made fun of the whole like 1% chance we have to take it as an absolute certainty thing. I think as a line that's fine because again that's just how far gone Bruce is. But as it's the problem is that like we really work so hard to like really establish that Bruce is like not so bonkers. And we talked about this with The Last of Us Part 2, where there we have a character who's like super hell bent on getting vengeance, and you had a major problem with like they decide not to, and it's like a flick of the switch. This is even
Yeah, I
worse.
simply don't buy it in the moment.
Yeah, this is even worse because it's not just that he's going to spare Superman after a whole movie of just no, I'm going to murder this person. It's that they immediately become quote unquote friends.
Oh yeah, that is horrendous. Um, it's also really and like I don't expect this movie to make a big deal out of the fact that he's decided to kill Superman. Um, they're clearly not. It's almost like they do and don't know that they've already had Batman. Well, not yet anyway, but we're gonna have Batman kill like a dozen goons later in this film.
Yeah, like the resolution of Batman's arc in this movie is just really scattershot. And again, it's the problem of Zack Snyder directs his action scenes, and it's like he doesn't care about the movie they're going in. They're just supposed to be cool and brutal music videos.
This scene also wasn't in the theatrical cut.
Yes, and this I like. This is like such a brief little moment of like Clark sees this downtrodden person who like this criminal that got killed, like they did some terrible things, but they had a loved one, and Clark goes up to them and is like, "Help me change it. Help me make this better." And this feels like a Superman moment.
It really does, and the movie could have used a lot more of this.
Hmm.
Like again, I'm not a Superman fan, but if you do it right, I can definitely still like his character and be invested in one of the stories.
Yeah, see, like fundamentally, Clark Kent should just be a guy that wants to help people. And the problem with most of this movie is that whenever he helps, he feels like he's doing it out of obligation and he doesn't want to be there.
Yeah, it's like people expect me to do it, so I'm doing it, even though I'm not really getting any adoration or like people still hate me in spite of the fact that I'm doing it.
And that was the other thing I wanted to bring up, which is like this movie retroactively makes Jonathan Kent even more nonsensical in Man of Steel, where we keep saying stuff like, Clark, you can use your powers to help people when the world is ready for it. And we get to this moment of like, okay, Zod shows up and Clark is like, this must be the moment he was talking about. Like, this has to be the time where it's okay for me to come out and use my powers and like be Superman. I'm done waiting. And now we get to this movie and just we're so heavy on the angle that like everyone distrusts him, where it's like, well, clearly the world wasn't ready for Superman. And if that's true, then at what point would they have been? It's like, I guess if Clark had listened to his dad and was like, wait for when people are ready, then he would have never been Superman, because clearly the world was never going to welcome him with open arms.
Um, I this is honestly kind of my least favorite Batmobile. Just because ironically, this can't even the actual Batmobile that they built can't even fit in a single lane of traffic. Um, and what's weird is Christopher Nolan's version is a tank, and that could still fit in a single lane of traffic.
Murder.
Like, yeah, murder. And like this is clearly not a Batmobile that he could actually drive around like throughout the city if it can't fit in a single lane of traffic. Like the streets would have to be completely like desolate and like no other vehicles aside from the ones he's chasing.
Why is he dragging this thing around? Like, if he's not, the only reason that he could have had to like attach that grapple to the car and then drag it around is if he knows for sure that he's going to toss it onto another car and kill those guys. So again, the movie wants us to think that he's going too far by branding people and killing them like indirectly, but here he is just directly slaughtering people. And again, it's the same thing of The Last of Us Part 2, where that works better for me than this does and it doesn't for you, but it's like we have this character who kills a bunch of people, and for reasons in the story, we're supposed to feel worse when they kill particular people. So we're going to get to the end here, and it's like, we should really feel bad that he's going to kill Clark, but I guess it's just fine when it's these people because they're criminals, I guess.
Uh, yeah, like, and what's weird is this clearly isn't the first time, especially since like Alfred is really against him killing Superman, but it's not played like it's the first time Bruce has come to the conclusion that he needs to kill this person, and it kind of should be, um, but clearly not if stuff like this is happening all the time.
Yeah. And like that one is less on Bruce. Like that explosion, like that really was that driver being careless. But like
I'm
the
talking about the scene in general. Yeah.
yeah, like the ramming the car and the throwing the car on top of the other one and like firing tons of bullets onto them, like coming down to jump onto the, he does all this stuff on purpose, and it's ridiculous. And it's like there really
And
should be.
I do want to point out, this is like a far cry from the first time we've seen Batman blatantly murder people and it's just been ignored on screen. Batman Returns, when he throws a guy, like attaches a bomb to him, throws him down a sewer grate, and smiles and walks away as he explodes.
Yeah, that's a little bit ridiculous.
This was a pretty epic moment in the trailer.
Yeah, once again, like it teases you with this thing of like, okay, we're gonna get to see them interact. It's like, oh no, basically what was in the trailer was the entire interaction.
Oh yeah, like it's like what are they gonna say to each other in this moment? Is Batman just completely vulnerable, just standing up to Superman? Like one of the coolest shots I'd ever seen in a trailer. And then he says, like, okay, this isn't even Superman.
And see, like this
Consider
is
this mercy. What is this injustice? Like, classic Superman should not be talking like this.
if there was any like self-awareness coming off of Man of Steel, then this could be a really interesting thing. Where again, it's Superman as this sort of unfortunately almost fascist guy where he's like, I have the authority to just tell you to stop and you have to listen to me because I'm stronger than you. Like, why is that not something that Batman has a problem with? Like, on top of all the damage he causes, Batman should be like, what gives you the right to tell me to do anything? Like, just because you have powers, you think I have to listen to you?
Well, that he might feel that way, but again, since
Don't
Zack
we don't
Snyder is
talk about it?
scared of these characters talking to each other in costume, they can't have that exchange.
Ugh.
And like these are two very different characters that you buy becoming friends throughout the Justice League cartoon and the comics, and there's so much material that shows you like it can be done, but you're so afraid of it looking goofy after. How deep are we into the Marvel movies at this point? And they've done Guardians and Ant-Man, and you really think audiences aren't ready to just watch Superman and Batman talk to each other in a scene?
Yeah, and like, I I don't want to assume too much because just like Snyder himself only went so far into it, but I think that's like an ego thing. I don't even think that's audiences aren't ready for this. I think it's I personally feel insecure doing that. Like it's not manly enough or it's not cool enough in his aesthetic. At which point I'm like, okay, don't direct this movie. Step away from this project.
Yeah, let people who actually have a love for these characters come in and do it.
And like I don't want to do the thing that a lot of people do, which is look at a person's filmography and assign like traits to them as a person because of it. Like obviously everyone's art is reflective of them as an artist. And it's really hard not to look at this movie in the context of other movies that Zack Snyder has made and get this sense of that it's just a real broy, real like hyper masculine for hyper masculinity's sake. And that's really not the kind of approach that you should be taking to this material, I don't think.
This would have been a great opportunity to give us a whole nother action scene and like show Batman actually breaking in, taking out his security, and um, getting the. Oh wait, never mind. That happens later.
Yeah, I know what you're
That
talking
happens
about.
later.
That also would have been a great opportunity to give us some dialogue between Luthor and Batman, but
This was one of the most intriguing scenes coming out of, I think the first major trailer that we got. You don't owe this world a thing.
yeah, just I get it. I get what they think they're doing. And like I understand people who are willing to take up for this scene is like she's his mom. Obviously, if you're a mother, your child's safety comes first and foremost. But like let's think about like this on multiple levels because first of all, as of right now, Luthor and his people are the only ones and Batman are the only ones who know that kryptonite is a thing. So, as far as Martha or anyone else is concerned, Clark is pretty much invincible. There are no more Kryptonians to like fight on his level. There's nothing in the world that's conceivably a threat to him. So like she
Like
doesn't need
that's
to be
not
that.
even well that's not even my issue with that scene. My issue with that scene is just that he says nothing. Like he has no response to that whatsoever.
Yeah. Like
Like
that's the real
the
problem again is that Clark has no input, but just like as we mentioned earlier, the fact that his values are supposed to come from his parents is like fine. It makes sense that if we're doing a more like realistic version of the Kents, that you'd be like, I care about my son before I care about anything else. And like parents will tell you that that makes sense. But this is a special case because your son is literally invulnerable, invincible, cannot be harmed as far as you know. And you can't just tell him, whatever, just worry about yourself. You don't have to care about anyone else on the planet if you don't want to. That's just really messed up, and the movie doesn't realize how messed up that is.
can we got to stop this. We got to get away from the bullet plot. End it. Stop it. It shouldn't even be here. Oh my god, I couldn't care less.
And it really, like, on this viewing, it really is sticking out just how much, like, if you remove this subplot, Lois really would have absolutely nothing to do. And it's like we need her to have significant screen time in this movie because she's the only person Clark cares about, and we're gonna like hinge his arc on like what she means to him. Okay, then fine, give them more scenes together. Like I don't think anyone's gonna call you like sexist or anything if Lois's role is primarily to be there for Clark. And yeah, like you get the sense that they give Lois all this nonsensical bullet stuff because they're worried that someone's gonna be like, oh, you only have one major female character in your movie and she doesn't actually contribute to the plot at all. She's just there as like to talk to one of the other male characters. And for the purposes of the story, it's fine if that's what Lois does in this movie. You don't have to force her to be proactive at the expense of the movie feeling like it's bloated.
Yeah, that's a really tired conversation of trying to throw in representation at the expense of your story. Like we got to stop forcing that at filmmakers and just let them tell stories. Um, I
It's
mean,
not
it's a fine line.
because like she would be in it anyway. It's
You know
like
what I mean? Like, give
it's like
them
trying to
an essential
force.
role versus just
Yeah,
the stereotypical damsel in distress or just there to be a love interest or et cetera, et cetera.
yeah. And like the thing is, it's unfortunate because like characters who are love interests get this kind of stigmatization. Is like where if you're just the love interest and that makes you a worse character, like with anything, what matters is execution. If a character is just there to be the love interest, but they're a good love interest, and like if she and Clark have conversations that are interesting and further Clark's character and impact the story in positive ways, then that's better than just having her go on this wild goose chase for a MacGuffin. And so like here we are at this point. I want to say we're almost at like the halfway point of the movie, and at this point in the theater is when I'm like, okay, I'm still waiting on this movie to turn it around. Maybe the reason that Clark hasn't been saying anything this whole hour and a half has been that we're building to this scene where he's in front of an authority and he has to actually explain himself. How cool would it have been if like Clark is kind of monosyllabic through this movie and like it's because he's thinking and he isn't really sure how he feels and then he gets here and then he and the audience have to like come to an understanding of what is it that he wants, how does he feel about his place and things, how does he want to be treated, and like stuff like that. Have him like give a monologue basically about what he
Yeah,
wants
like
things are like.
and you can do that and make it compelling. One of the best scenes in all of Daredevil is literally just Frank Castle
Mm-hmm.
talking to Daredevil in a cemetery for like 10 to 15 minutes.
Yeah, it's like just this unbroken like Daredevil himself has no dialogue. It's his unbroken, like,
Well,
just
he does have an exchange or two with Frank throughout that scene, but yeah.
yeah, it's this mostly unbroken like stretch of one person talking, and if that person is compelling enough, and if the performance is good enough, then that can make the episode or that can make your movie. And like, if people
And
come
it would have
out,
been so brilliant to finally get that here.
yeah, if we come out of the other side of this scene going, I get it now. I understand this version of Clark Kent and what he wants and what his issue is and where he's trying to end up, then the latter half of this movie maybe plays better.
And it would have given Henry Cavill the chance to really like show off what he can do in this role that he deserves, because um, he's great as Geralt in The Witcher. He's great in everything he's in. Um, but this, like, because of what he's given to work with, I can't say he's the best Superman we've had so far. Um, the distinction for me is he is my favorite actor to portray the character.
That makes sense.
Um, yeah, but he hasn't been given the proper tools to work with,
And
and
oh my,
we see sides of oh god, this thing.
I can't believe
Oh,
I
this is awful.
forgot. I can't believe I forgot
Oh,
about
this is one of the most infamous things in the movie. I can't forget about this.
Lex Luthor pisses in a jar. Who did?
First of all, the Granny's peach tea thing is really dumb. I don't know if that's an actual euphemism or whatever the heck.
I feel like
But
it had to have made it up for this scene, right?
more than likely, yeah. That's oh god, I hate this so much.
I don't. He pisses in a jar.
And he waits until she notices. But what if she didn't even notice?
Yeah, and just like the sheer whiplash that you feel coming out of this scene where it's like, and again, part of this is also again on the movie's marketing, where it's like we market this movie as like the world put Superman on trial for what he did in Man of Steel. We're gonna watch him actually like be confronted with people who are like, okay, Superman, answer for what you did, and then he has to answer. And then like you come into the movie and you sit down expecting that to be the scene, but then nope, it's a jar of pee on the desk, and then the room explodes. You don't have enough time to recover from the jar of pee before you think about like, oh, I guess that thing that we were selling the movie on just isn't going to happen.
I would love to know how Lex knows about the death of Robin to provoke Bruce Wayne in this way. How he even knows how he knows Bruce Wayne is Batman to begin with. That'd be nice information. Um,
And like especially if because of the timelines, if you really want to start thinking about it, the timeline is really odd because we don't know how long it's been since Robin died. How long has it been since the Joker did anything? And by extension, Lex being as young as he is, would he have any knowledge of that just from having like been cognizant during the time that that happened?
um,
And like that much, I'll
it's
admit is like major nitpicking. But again, it's just part of this problem of why does everything have to tie back to Lex in the first place?
like it's we literally make him the Palpatine of this movie, and like he's in the movie a lot more. But his plan like makes zero sense.
You know what? Palpatine is actually a great comparison. I was trying to think of who the other comparison was aside from Zemo, but it is Palpatine in the prequels, where it's like every single stupid like decision that characters made and like every single bad thing that happens in the prequels, every single thing is ultimately like Palpatine being like, yeah, that was all according to plan. And it's like,
Yeah.
no, sometimes your
uh,
character should just make decisions independent of the bad guy.
Yeah, they were all puppets on my string. They
Or
got no strings on me.
like Moriarty and Sherlock or something.
Yeah.
And we get a cut to that lady again, with her son, the one who was like, "Oh, you don't got to worry about Batman unless you do something wrong." And I get the impression that she's like, "What? Superman didn't know? There's no way." And like that's interesting. That's something that this movie needed on top of everything else. We need someone in this movie who is 100% on board with Batman and Superman, because like it's real weird that there's no character in this movie who likes both of them when the audience is supposed to like both of them.
Yeah, this is so like, especially since it's Zack Snyder, it's strange to me that he didn't take the opportunity to actually make this an action scene.
Maybe he didn't want to
And you
like spoil it for later and he wanted that to be like a climactic thing.
well, no, just like I'm thinking, like he could have easily done it like they did that Big Daddy scene in Kick Ass. Like he looks at the review footage and it zooms in and just shows Batman beating the snot out of all of his security.
True. And like when we get to that scene, that's like a beat 'em up thing. They could have done like a stealth thing where it's less like he's fighting them and more like he's just taking them out stealth style.
And I'm fine with a more intellectual superhero thing. Like The Boys doesn't have a ton of action. That's not where the real exciting punch of that series comes from. There's not a ton of actual action scenes, but like this movie, like it's not even like it's not like Joker is, I think, severely overhyped and a lot more pretentious than people. I don't know. I think that movie gets way more credit than it deserves, really. But
Agree.
this is a movie that's not even successful in getting most people on board with how self-important and pretentious and sophisticated it's acting like it is.
And like speaking of
And
self-important, like someone pointed it out to me and I can't like not find it funny. Like the beginning of this scene where Lois is walking around the room and like Clark is just there. He's literally just standing there sulking, waiting for her to notice him, and it's so childish. Yeah, like that line about Jonathan's like the Superman was never real. He was just a dream of a farmer from Kansas. It's like again, Jonathan was like, "Don't be Superman, and don't save people until the world is ready," which will probably never happen. And I guess he literally had a premonition about Clark becoming Superman or something because he's really confident that at a certain point you can do it and it'll be fine, but that never happens.
yeah, there's a huge disconnect there. Um, don't save people. Yeah, Superman was a dream of my father, and it's like, no, your father definitely didn't want you saving people. I don't know if you saw the last movie you were in. That was not the case.
I know you weren't in that scene, Henry Cavill, but still.
He straight up told you to not save him from a tornado, and that's how he died. And you
Exactly.
let him die.
You had a whole argument in the car where it's like, oh, why can't I help people? And he's like, what? Being a farmer is not helping people?
This is also one of the strangest ways to get to Doomsday. First of all, Doomsday shouldn't be in this movie.
Agree.
Um,
No, you should not.
like you should have made the conflict a lot more personal and it's really an ideological, um, you know, confrontation between Batman and Superman. Because uh, well, I should say traditionally their comic counterparts handle things very differently. But Superman still clearly kills people, and so does Batman. So there is no real ideological like debate for either of these characters to have, because in this incarnation, regardless of how much the writers and the filmmakers want to pretend like we're clearly not watching these characters kill people in scenes, they are. And
Yeah.
so there is no debate to be had,
Well, I mean,
which
I
is
think they could.
really frustrating.
We've
I mean,
broke.
sure, I guess that's not what the debate could be about. Maybe it's just about the fact that he's going too far and doesn't answer to anyone, but Superman doesn't either.
There's any
And we
number
see
of
him
things
kill
the debate
someone.
could be about, honestly. Like we've broached a couple of them over the course of this movie. Like it could be like Batman's being like, okay, Superman, you help, but you don't help everyone. You don't help Gotham. I think that's a problem, like selective policing. The Clark could be like, okay, I'll kill people in the moment, but I don't like send them to their deaths with a brand. That's like I make decisions, like snap judgments if I think it's necessary. I don't like premeditatively, methodically kill people in like this really
And
cowardly roundabout way.
and it's so goofy to have him like to have a montage of him saving people all around the world. Um, but the most crime-ridden city, presumably in the world, which is Gotham, right across the harbor, and he never handles crime there. That's what's so goofy about making Gotham, like putting Gotham so close in proximity to Metropolis.
Yeah. It's just like there really
And
is any number of things that they could have a conflict about. And like you say, get rid of Doomsday. Doomsday doesn't need to be here. And unfortunately, this would draw only more comparisons to Civil War. But I really do think it would be like for this movie's benefit if the climax, if the big final fight is the title fight. If Batman and Superman fight each other, and like that is our big near the end of the movie blowout action scene, we reach that conclusion, and then we deal with Lex Luthor in maybe a less action driven way. That's fine.
we make fun of, well, I shouldn't say we. Some people make fun of Wonder Woman's theme that Hans Zimmer came up with for this movie and is used a lot in Wonder Woman's standalone film. I think it's great. I really like it. It's kind of iconic with that character, honestly. Like
It's
I
great.
expect to hear that again in the sequel, like at some point. Like that has become her theme.
I'd love it if we do like a synthy version of it in the sequel, but like it's a really really great action theme. I don't think it works as the backing track of like opening up these files and looking at that stuff. It
No,
feels
I don't. They're treating it like it's an epic moment, and it's still literally just Bruce Wayne staring at a screen.
also Lex. What do you mean about flying too close to the sun? That's not what Zod's problem was at all.
Well, none of his platitudes and rhetoric make any sense anyway. If like he says it to Superman later as Doomsday's coming to life, he's like, if
Man,
God is all powerful, then he can't be all good. And it's like Superman clearly isn't all powerful. You have kryptonite.
he's
Um,
also not all good. He murders people.
not all good either. How do you even know he's all good?
Yeah, and like
Like
it's not even that everyone but Lex treats Superman like he's all good.
public opinion of Superman is not great.
Yeah, the majority of people seem to think that he's not all good.
And like, see, look at this footage. People are actually blaming him for what went down when we see him flying a lady down to safety and taking her to like the medical personnel that are on scene. Like, we're just gonna ignore that?
Yeah, it's this really weird thing where we put a lot of work into Lex's motivation of like his daddy issues and his like maltheism and his hatred of God. And so he starts treating Superman like God, and like if I can kill Superman, then that'll be the catharsis I need. But it doesn't make any sense because before the two of them even have a conversation together, before the movie even properly starts, like there's no reason to look at Superman as a god figure. Like people talk about him in like messianic terms, but like you said, like he's not all good demonstrably, and he's not all powerful because you have the thing that you know can kill him. So, like, why is this even still a hang up for you?
Um, and I remember you citing Chris Terrio as the big issue with this movie. I rewatched Sucker Punch maybe a month ago. Um, that movie's not great either. It's got this really dirty, like sexually abusive undertone, and not even undertone because like a lot of
It's
those women are just straight up
it's an
slaves. But
overtone. It's the movie.
yeah, that's essentially the movie, and then it's straight up objectification of those people as they're dressed like schoolgirls murdering robots and all kinds of other crazy sci-fi nonsense. But yeah, that movie is straight up kind of a disturbing, self-indulgent, just fantasy.
It's a
Which
very odd peek into Zack Snyder's mind.
yeah, it's not great, but like visually that movie is like bonkers and like it just speaks to him as a filmmaker and how that's mostly what he's fixated on. He couldn't care less what the actual story that he's telling is, as long as he gets to do some cool visuals and fights and things. Like it doesn't really matter who's writing what he's doing or if the story he's telling makes any degree of sense.
Yeah. And
Because I could so do without this.
this is so, and like this is what I'm thinking because Chris Terrio, he also goes on to write Rise of Skywalker, and he does this exact same scene. Literally a character not talking to like a force ghost, like a weird memory ghost, and they have a conversation like they're actually there, and it's like, no, we've set no precedent for like speaking to dead people outside of like
Well, this isn't even at this point. It just makes him feel kind of insane
yeah, that's what I'm
because
saying.
it's
Like they're
not played as a ghost. It's literally just him talking to a hallucination of his dad.
yeah,
And
like
the same thing goes for Ben in Rise of Skywalker.
we've not established ghosts as a thing in this universe, so there's literally no other way to interpret this aside from Clark just has a screw loose. And like I already didn't feel safe enough with him having the amount of power he does. The fact that he's literally cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs is not helping his case.
Yeah, like I've lost a close loved one before. Never had a hallucination of them, and they didn't start talking to me, and I didn't have a conversation with them.
And it doesn't help that
That's
this conversation by itself also just isn't good because the point that
yeah.
we come away from this with is like everything's terrible, the world can hate you, everything will be bad, and you'll get no fulfillment out of what you do, but it's fine so long as you've got a good woman.
Yeah, Lois is the only thing tethering you to any degree of humanity. So just hold on to that.
And like the implication of Bruce's weird dream sequence is like if Lois dies or if something happens to her,
You
then
mean
Clark goes
Clark's not
nuts
you
and
said Bruce.
kills everyone. And like you're not giving me cause to believe that that wouldn't happen.
You said Bruce's dream.
Yeah, in the nightmare thing where like Clark shows up and he's like a dictator or whatever, and he's killing everyone. He's
Oh,
like,
you're talking about yeah, the dark side and Dictator Superman, all that stuff. Okay.
yeah, he's like, she was my world, and you took her from me, so I'm gonna kill you. It's like if I'm meant to believe that that's not something that could actually happen, you're not helping your case.
And it's taking, what actually worked about the Injustice storyline and muddling it and making it so much worse.
Mm.
Like, because that was like Superman was actually Superman in that story. I mean, it was an Elseworld story, but like he still had, those values. And the big part of getting him to snap is that he does the act himself. He takes, like, he's tricked by the Joker, but he's the one that, murders his own. I don't think they're married at that point, but his loved one. Um, but with this incarnation of Superman, it's like, I mean, regardless of how Lewis dies, she dies, and that's it. Like, screw the world. I'm ready to kill everyone. Um, and I don't know if like that story in Injustice plays out the same way if like someone else were to kill Lois, because Superman is actually classic Superman before that happens. Like, he still has a good upbringing by the Kents. He cares so much about humanity because of the Kents. And this Superman doesn't really have that. So, you see what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah, totally. It's just, and we try to do a similar thing with his mom, and it's like I get like what we just talked about, where Lois is really this movie's only major female character. They probably didn't want to make her the damsel in distress, but like you could cut a good 30, 40 minutes out of this movie if Martha's just like barely in it or like not in it at all, and it's Lois who's in this position. Like I know how that sounds, but if Lex Luthor kidnaps Lois Lane, then we kill a lot of birds with one stone and like streamline this movie significantly. Okay, Hans, I like it, but this music is going a little bit overboard. Can you tone it down a little bit, please?
we're going super bombastic here. And it's, yeah, it's a choice. I mean,
A lot.
I don't hate this score. I like a lot of it. Um, but I don't. I've done a good job of not comparing this to Nolan so far. But I do like Nolan's score a lot better.
Yeah, actually, no, that's interesting. Like, it's funny that whenever I watch this movie, like comparing it to the Nolan films isn't really something that I do consciously. But yeah, no. So all of this stuff with Lois and the Bullet was just to get us here to where she would be on top of the tower with Luthor and he can push her off. Which again, he could have just done that at any point, especially since he knows that Clark is Superman. The only purpose behind the Bullet thing was just to have Lois be on screen more. I'm like, we're coming up on what will be a problem, which is after, you know, Lex has another little spaz attack and like lays out his motivation. He pushes Lois off the building, and Clark, who we did not see leave wherever it is he was in the mountains, so we have to assume that he's still there, and that he gets from there to Metropolis in like zero point 0.5 seconds because he hears Lois
Well,
scream.
I don't think there's any reason to assume he's still there. Um,
I
he's
just like,
Superman, and that was like like 2 scenes ago. Like, he probably could have gone back to Metropolis. He's somewhere in Metropolis at this time. I don't have an issue with that.
maybe I don't think that scene ends with any indication that he plans to go back, but I might be wrong.
I mean, why wouldn't he? Why would he just hang out there for who knows how long?
Why'd he
But
go there in the first place?
yeah, I mean, that's the better question. But like that's not really an issue for me. But what is an issue for me is if he can just, I don't, wherever the heck he is. I mean, this is around the same time that no, probably the exact same time that his mother's being kidnapped. He can
Yep.
hear Lewis fall and scream, but he can't hear his own mother getting kidnapped. That's pretty contrived.
Yeah, like, and this is the scenario that we build the entire like emotional climax of this movie around basically is like he's like, I have to fight Batman, I have to get him to listen to me, or I have to kill him because those are the terms that Lex laid out. You have an hour. You're Superman. You know she has to be within one of these two cities that are right next to each other. Just, just take. You have super speed. You have X-ray vision. You have super hearing. It should take you 5 seconds to find your mom. And this is another thing where sometimes I can't be sure if Zack Snyder is just making stuff up or if he's just like pulling nonsense out of his butthole, because when the theatrical cut came out and people made that point and made that criticism, he was like, no, you guys, you got to believe me, we have a scene that we deleted where Superman does try to look for his mom, but he can't. He tries to like use his super hearing, but he just hears a whole bunch of other things, and so he gives up. That and that feels like such an excuse, and I sincerely doubt
No,
they
that's exactly
do.
what it is. Yeah.
And it's just like, at no point do I think Snyder or anyone even thought about it. Like, yeah, let's just give Superman an hour to find Batman or maybe find his mom, which he could do whenever he felt like.
Uh, I hate this Lex Luthor.
I don't know. I feel like there's a world in which this could work. Where, like,
Like maybe if he has a decent script and like his actual plan makes any sense and all these ridiculous platitudes actually work and make sense within the context of the story. But none of that does. So I this isn't a person like I said, this isn't an attack against Lex Luthor. I mean, I will say I don't think he's right for this role.
Jesse Eisenberg, yeah.
Yeah, Jesse Eisenberg. I don't think he's right for this role. But if he had a decent script behind them and this worked, it'd be a radically different interpretation than anything we've seen in the comics or cartoons. But I'd be for it. I'd be on board if it was actually good, but it's not. So I hate this Lex Luthor.
And even if you don't have like a sort of aversion just to his mannerisms or whatever, you have to ask yourself, like, and the reason why this feels like a really arbitrary choice, either by him or by Snyder, it's like, okay, he acts this way and he's a super weirdo, fine. Why? Like, for the purposes of the story, what is the fact that he acts this way communicating to us, the audience? What am I supposed to think about the fact that he's like this super socially awkward weirdo? Is like, does that mean anything? It doesn't seem like it's communicating anything of meaning because no one is reacting to it. No one reacts to him like he's the freaking cartoon character that he is. He's not acting like anyone else across either of these two movies. And like Clark is right here in front of him where he's being this super weirdo and Clark has no reaction to it. Like the movie doesn't seem to care beyond just, oh, it's Jesse Eisenberg having a bit of fun. It doesn't actually reflect on the character at all.
Oh, God.
Just just looking at his face and like he's literally like vibrating in just sheer manic energy.
Uh, yeah, it's uh one of the funniest moments like in the theater where everyone was actually like nervously laughing was when Superman like jerks his head up with his eye beams and he's like, "Where is she?" And he's like, "I don't know. I wouldn't let him tell me."
And like you get the sense that most of this is meant to get a laugh, but it's just I almost admire the commitment to the bit because he really goes all in. I'll flamethrower you. And like I've generally avoided talking about this just because, after Man of Steel, we've kind of accepted, even if we don't like it, that this is like Zack's vision for the world. And like, it's fine if this is the route that DC wanted to go and they wanted to make their movies more quote unquote mature and like more gritty than the Marvel stuff. But like you see stuff like this of like this very like grimy aesthetic, this very like low lit, super like emotionally dirgy scene of Superman's mom tied up to a chair about to get roasted by a flamethrower, and you're like, wasn't this Superman Batman movie supposed to be fun? Aren't we supposed to be having a good time at some point in this movie? Aren't kids supposed to enjoy this at least a little bit? And
Well,
it's
Dark Knight Returns, even though it has its levity, is still a fairly dark story. But I also think a lot of, well, I don't want to call any fan fake, but I just find that whole DC is a lot more darker than Marvel thing really pretentious and tone deaf. As someone who's read the comics and watched a lot of the cartoons, like they're like DC tends to be a little darker, sure, but they still have their really colorful, zany, weird stuff. And like even when you go back to Justice League, and Justice League Unlimited, like that show is plenty fun and plenty colorful. Like that's not a super drab, dark. Not every DC thing is a super drab, dark, depressing thing. And I feel like we don't really have that mindset until we get Nolan's trilogy and we
yeah.
get some darker comics. Um, but like DC is not that hasn't always been DC's MO, and it's really not their MO as much as people claim that it is.
And again, it's worse here than it is in the Nolan movies because with Nolan, it's like this is not part of any extended universe. This is a trilogy of 3 movies that happen to be based off Batman, but they are fundamentally Christopher Nolan's movies. And so they're going to feel like Christopher Nolan films, and that's fine. Here, like, I get the same impression. Like, it's Zack Snyder's movie, let it feel the way he wants it to feel. But you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot if you're trying to let this be like your big answer to, all right, now we're officially competing with Marvel. Where it's like dark events will happen in the Marvel movies, but they have managed to balance this tone really finely of like, yeah, adults can enjoy it and adults can like appreciate the darker moments when they happen, but there's really nothing that makes it inappropriate for children or anything where it's like if you want the lighter stuff, there is something in each movie for you. This is just like it's so the word that I keep coming back to is like it's oppressive. Like the aesthetic and the soundtrack, for as much as I love the score, just the way everything looks and feels and the tone of it all is just so it's just so heavy. It's like I couldn't imagine anyone watching this movie for a good time.
Well, see, and like Logan and Joker are very much kind of in that vein. And see, that's the thing. As long as you're simply telling a good story with compelling characters, I don't
Yeah,
think the tone really matters. It can be dark, it can be like that's not an inherently bad thing. It can be the tone can be whatever. It doesn't matter as long as it's tonally consistent. The main thing is just that you're telling a good story with compelling characters.
yeah. And I think again, like that it creates like a feedback loop, which because we're not compelled by the characters, I have no choice but to focus on the tone because it's not like my mind isn't going to, oh man, I feel bad for Martha Kent or I feel bad for Clark. I hope they make it out of this. My mind is going to, oh man, this situation is kind of messed up. I kind of don't feel like I want to be watching this right now. Okay, so here he is. He has he could just stay in the air. He doesn't have to go down to the ground. He could just stay where he was and be like, "Hey, Lex Luthor's kidnapped my mom. Help me out." But no, and he has like 5 or 6 or 7 opportunities over the course of this fight to just be like, listen, there's an innocent woman's life at stake. We got to put aside our beef. Help me save her. But
Yeah, this
because
whole
we're
fight
in
is
the,
really dumb and contrived, and it's the most anticlimactic and boring fight I have ever seen. And
exactly, like I genuinely don't think anything about this works. Like the setup doesn't work. The fact that he keeps fighting him when he has every opportunity to either ask for his help or run away when the kryptonite
like
comes out.
it's Superman. I don't buy him running away. But
His mom's
like
life
he
is at risk, and this is like wasting valuable time. He
like
should,
just grab him by the neck or the shoulder, whatever, and tell him what's going on.
yeah. But also, just like you said, even if all of that stuff wasn't the factor here, and like we just accepted that whatever the script has to be stupid, so that we can have the fight. The
There's
fight,
also this fight is also extended here. There's extra bits of him just tossing him around. Like this bit isn't even in the theatrical cut.
yeah, you're right. I don't remember that. But also, just talk to him now. No, okay. Yeah, but yeah, even if we put aside all of that, if we just accept it, fine. They're not going to talk to each other. Clark is just
Fight
going
isn't
to.
even super fun to watch. It's a
Yeah,
pretty lame fight.
it's really lame. And like, there are people who are like, oh, but the fight is so cool. It's really not. They're both
It's not.
like the way that Eric described it is like they're moving like they're on the moon. It's like the choreography is very sluggish. Like it
I
takes.
mean, of course, Batman is he's in armor, but I don't even agree with that take. Like, it's not even that the actual fighting is too slow, but um, well, some of it is sure, but this fight is just there's like it's just lamely choreographed and
The way that I think about it is that it's really generic, where it's like
yeah,
I don't want to make. Well, it's too late already because we've already done so many comparisons to Marvel. But like you look at Civil War and you look at Infinity War and whatever, you've got all these characters there with different powers, and no two characters fight the same way. And it always seems like the second unit guys or the Russos or whoever are like, how can we make the actual fighting and action as dynamic and unique to each individual as possible? Whereas here, what we're doing right now is basically what this whole fight is going to be. It's just two guys tussling.
it's literally like two action figures.
Yeah,
It's
like
not a compelling action scene. It's just like it feels like people playing with action figures.
yeah, it
Like
feels
a like a
like a YouTube channel could do of like two guys who put on a Batman outfit and a Superman outfit. They could make an approximation of this scene where it's just like just tossing some punches, like grab each other, grapple around for a bit, maybe a few kicks. It's like it's just so lame.
and uh I will admit this I mean like I said, like all he cares about is iconography, so of course he's gonna use the suit from Dark Knight Returns. It looks pretty good here. Um like I know like pretty much all of it is CG. Um doesn't look it. Like it looks like it's actually there. And that's pretty solid. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah,
And like the only thing that ever really takes me out is a few shots of Doomsday here and there, but for the most part, um, all the effects in this movie like look great. Like it's a well-made movie.
hmm. But yeah, see that beat that just happened where like Bruce was punching him and like his punches were slowly not working. And then Clark is like, oh, well, what are you going to do now? And Bruce is like cowering away, like backing up in fear. It's like, that's your opportunity to talk to him. He's at your mercy
Yeah.
now. But no, because this Superman doesn't like to talk, and because he's angry now, we're still just in punch, punch, punch land.
and we have to be so generic as to have the superheroes team up at the end. Um, so they and granted, it looks like Civil War is going in that direction, but then they quickly subvert it. Um, with this, it's yep, we have our big fight, and then we're all gonna fight Doomsday. Um, and Batman contributes very little to that fight anyway, because he can't. It's freaking Doomsday. So,
Doomsday.
so Superman and Wonder Woman are doing a lot of the heavy lifting in that fight, which is I kind of love that. I kind of love that most of Batman's involvement is just running away from Doomsday because that's all he can do.
But he has to get it to chase him into the city to grab the spear. He couldn't just
That's
get the spear and come
that's
back.
unintentionally hilarious. He's like, "Oh, my back."
Yeah, see, like the fight is pretty much already over. He's gonna grapple him and like toss him around like a balloon. But like the
No,
fighting,
but this is so contrived. Like he planned. Like I don't buy this at all. It's Batman, but like he planned that the fight would lead to this area, and he already has the spear planted here. Like he knew for sure he would eventually be able to get Superman to this spot.
Superman doesn't know what kryptonite is still. Why don't you just carry the spear on you and like stab him with it, and he probably won't even expect it to do anything. This is so
God,
ridiculous.
this is an awful scene.
Like,
Um,
I'm sorry. Like, I try not to make too many judgments about people. If you are somehow impressed with this fight scene, I really don't envy your standards. Like, you really have to have a low bar to be satisfied with this as the title fight of this movie. And it's pretty convenient that Lois knew that this is where the fight led them also. So see, we had the bit where he's like, I bet your parents taught you that you were special. And like a lot of people's justification for this bit coming up is going to be like, he hadn't considered that Clark was like a real person who had parents. It's like, well, that's undercut because you just gave him that line.
and that's dumb anyway. Like he's an alien, sure, but he's still. I mean, look at him. He's a person. Like he has the same thoughts and kind of insecurities as an actual person would, and like
Well, like clearly, Bruce is just like way too in his feelings, and he's deliberately dehumanizing him. And that could be maybe interesting if we talked about that more, like with a scene with Alfred or something, where it's like, this is a person, right? And Bruce is like, no, he isn't. He's not a person because he's just so hell bent on revenge that he has to justify it to himself. I'm not killing somebody because he's not really a body, but it's too forced and like this is so silly. I'm sorry, it's just silly. If Superman's mom happened to have a different name, he would be dead. And that really undercuts like any emotion here. It's too based on the coincidence. It doesn't like speak to any inherent humanity or goodness in either of these characters. It just speaks
one of
to
my favorite lines from him in this movie when he says, "My parents taught me the world only makes sense if you force it to." Um, I'd like to I'd like to have that elaborated on a little more because I'm not even entirely sure what that means.
I
Um,
took it to mean like his parents died, and like the only way that you can have any control is if you just like force control. So his parents are gone. He's like, oh, my world got flipped upside down. If I want to avoid feeling this way again, I have to take every single thing into my own hands, and I have to be like the
And
man.
that starts his unhealthy obsession with ending crime.
Yeah. And so when Superman shows up and even more people who are close to him get hurt or killed, he's like, nope, this isn't enough. I have to murder you. And already we're here. It's happened. The light has been flipped. They are friends now. You're my best friend.
Yeah, this is terrible. One of the worst cringe-inducing 180s I have ever seen in cinema, period.
Ooh. And so, like, now we're at the stage where if Batman had not killed anyone after this scene, then that would maybe make his arc stronger. Is like, he's so caught up in revenge on Superman that everyone else is just collateral to that revenge. Again, like The Last of Us. And he gets there, and then he's like, oh man, I've gone too far. I can't do it. And so after that moment, he stops killing anybody because he's realized that he can't keep being that guy. But no, in this scene that's coming up, he's just gonna murk folks left and right, and we're just not supposed to think about it. It's just supposed to look cool.
We talked over the infamous. It's his mother's name.
Yeah. I just. It's so dumb. It's really dumb. And just like it would be so much less dumb if they didn't fixate on the name.
Okay, you realize this guy had the same. His mother had the exact same name. That's what does that change exactly?
Yeah, see, because it makes what it's supposed to be is again that like Bruce thinks back to his own parents' death and he's like, oh man, now I'm the guy with the gun. I'm someone who's going to break up this family by killing this person. But it reads as like way more self-interested because it seems like it's just like, wait a minute, your mom's name is Martha. That makes you sort of like me in this superficial way. Now I can relate to you. So yeah, if you take this action scene like in a total vacuum and ignore any of the implications it has for character or story, it's pretty impressive. And like we've talked about just our feelings about the action as action throughout this movie, looking at it combined with Man of Steel, I think this might be the only action scene I actually like across either movie. And it really sucks to say that.
It, well, it's easily the best. It's the best action scene we've had with Batman on cinema. Period. It sucks that it's in such a terrible movie, but this is easily the highlight. It's like watching, like a Batman Arkham like fight scene in live action. It's incredibly done. That's hilarious. He just tries to go for the bomb before it blows up.
Why is your first instinct to grab it and not to like flick it away?
Before I guess before he could even like he was trying to grab it and throw it back at Batman, but just ran out of time.
Yeah, that was not gonna work out. And you, why? Why is it so necessary to be like so gratuitous with the violence?
I mean, I don't really. It's not an issue for me. Like it's whatever. But this fight scene is so much fun.
It's the context that this movie exists in. Where again, like you look at the Nolan movies and it's like that's a
I
so
like that bit. I like that bit. I like that he's going too far and like straight up pounding on one guy when he doesn't have to, and that kind of costs him. I mean, his helmet is bulletproof, which is nice, but those cowl, I should say. But yeah, that kind of like this Batman is more, I guess, more raw and less tactical than maybe Christian Bale's, and he's full of this rage. So like he keeps pounding on this one guy when there are like three other guys still in the room.
Yeah. Oof. Yeah, I think part of my problem with the violence is just the context that this movie exists in, insofar as it's not like the Nolan movies where that is an experimental trilogy of films by a very idiosyncratic filmmaker that's like cordoned off. Those three movies exist as their own thing. Again, this is supposed to be our DC movies from here on out are going to be stemming from this, and they're going to exist in the world that this movie exists in. And to have this movie, which is that springboard, be so grim and violent is like just straight up saying we don't want the majority target audience of these characters to even be watching these. And I just don't understand why you do that. Like
I mean,
Batman,
I don't agree with
I
that. I
mean,
don't. I don't feel like that's a particularly rated R or even too rough for kids type action scene.
just the bit
Um,
where the guy gets hit with the crate and like his bloody, like his head like leaves this blood splatter on the wall.
and
Like I,
even then, that's something for the extended cut. In the theatrical cut, there's no blood.
that's true.
Um, but like with Nolan's action scenes, I'm not gonna lie, a lot of those are underwhelming and they kind of suck.
They feel
Like
very
rapid
hampered
fire
by
editing, you can't
the
even
lack of
like
mobility.
rapid fire editing, and you can't even tell what is going on in a lot of his fight scenes until we finally get to Rises. And even then, there's only one like truly decent fight in that movie. Um, but like Nolan, like he's more focused on story than the action, so I give him a pass on that. Um, but like if you go back to the action of those movies, they're not shot particularly well, and it's a lot of quick cutting. And
I like this. I like
like
he picks up the phone and Batman's on the line. He's just like, "Oh, well."
yeah, this didn't go according to plan. But it's a good thing I'm already working on my backup, even though I expect this plan to go off without a hitch.
Yeah, he's super lucky that Doomsday is like finished cooking at exactly the right time that he needs it. Like 5 more minutes and he would be in jail right now.
Uh,
And again, this feels like such a wasted opportunity. Like we have our
and
climactic.
that's also a really that's a super dumb line. Like Superman's not God. He's not all powerful. He has a weakness. You know what the weakness is. You have kryptonite. It's so dumb. But continue what you were saying.
It's just it feels like such a waste of like we've got Superman and Lex Luthor like properly facing each other, and like it's like we just kind of let it go by because we don't want Superman to say anything. So it's really just another scene of Luthor ranting to himself, pretty much. Yeah, ew, ew, it's gross. Also, it's really unfortunate that Doomsday is literally Zod's corpse given like new life, and Clark just doesn't care about that at all if he even realizes it. It's like I killed this guy already, and allegedly that was a big deal, but I'm just gonna not mention it.
Well, I mean, Superman barely talks in this movie anyway.
No.
Um, if I remember correct, it's something like he doesn't even have over 50 lines in the movie, which is
Someone
pretty
made a
bad.
50, like 15 is really lowballing it, but it was like a
I
surprisingly
said
small
50.
number
I
for.
said 59.
But yeah, it was a genuinely really small number for who is allegedly the protagonist of the film.
Yeah. Well,
I do like
Batman
this.
does have a name first, but
I do like this. I like that like Doomsday comes in, he sees this statue, and he's like, "What? Really?" There's a little bit of Zod still in there. He's like, "No, no, this is not okay."
it's also really bizarre to make a dead body of Zod Doomsday. Um, but whatever. Take your creative. I mean, I kind of share his bewilderment in that moment because
Where
given
did
the
the
context,
statue come?
I don't buy that Superman even has that statue made for him with public opinion is about him. Like that doesn't track or make any degree of sense. But okay, like there's no media outlet or any prolific like representation of the public that like even pretends to like Superman. Like
He's a
everyone's questioning him. Everyone's worrying about what where his true intentions lie. There's no one that trusts him. Like it's I don't buy that this version of Superman even has that statue.
no. He's a big, gray, naked man, sir. I can see his butt. So I guess what we're meant to take from this is that she's on the plane because Bruce discovered her identity, and she's like, I gotta get the heck out of Dodge. Who knows what he could do with that information? But like, does she not want to like confront him about it? Like, try to silence him? Like, does she really think if Bruce Wayne has her information that her going anywhere is going to escape that influence?
I hate this so much.
Ooh, this is this is a lot.
I've never seen any incarnation of Doomsday just emit shockwave energy pulses that are like mini nukes and just obliterate dozens and dozens of blocks.
Well, was Superman himself not doing something kind of similar in the comics at the time, where he was able to like unleash this massive solar energy burst? Is that what that's a reference
Well,
to?
I mean, I've never actually read The Death of Superman. I've just watched reviews of it on YouTube.
No, not
But
in Death of Superman, but like in like contemporary comics. I want to say like with New 52 and stuff. They're like Superman can do
yep,
a bomb of solar energy. Maybe that's they're trying to like reference that.
that's kind of dumb since our actual Superman never does this, and neither does Zod. And like the only comics from New 52 that I read were Batman, Flash, and Green Arrow, and a little bit of Suicide Squad. Yeah, I don't know anything about that ability in particular.
But Malik, you don't understand. It gives Zack Snyder the opportunity to
the,
have lots of
the
particles
excuse
that
to blow up,
lots.
yeah, the excuse to keep blowing up like chunks of the city over and over like he did in the last movie.
Yeah,
'Cause
more buildings exploding, more particles everywhere. And I didn't notice that the last time. That's literally a visual parallel to the Man of Steel fight where he like punches him and then he flies over and the camera follows him and he punches him again.
yeah, that's pretty fun. Which and they incorporated that move in the Injustice games, and I love that. That is one of the only legitimately cool flourishes in that whole ridiculously long and overblown action scene. Is
Yeah,
how they filmed that shot.
that became kind of like iconic. Like Supergirl did its own version of that.
Mm-hmm. And like I said, it was in the Injustice games. Like that's become kind of ubiquitous with modern Superman.
Hmm. Which is unfortunate because it's kind of our bigger problem with this take in a nutshell, which is that like Zack Snyder really doesn't have anything to say or do with Superman beyond just the punchy stuff.
Yeah, he doesn't really like, as far as I can tell, both him and the people writing this movie don't really have an affinity for Superman on any level. Really, like they can't even let him talk. He's one
Yeah.
of the most talky characters in comics.
Which how much of that do you think is fear, maybe, of like Superman's such a big character and like everything that you have him say, just by virtue of what a huge character he is and the implications of his very existence, you almost don't want to give him too much to say because then that that's like a lot of pressure. Like almost like they're thinking the less that we give Superman to say dialogue wise, the less chance there is that we screw it up. And it's like, well, no, because otherwise, then we just
Well,
have to.
me and Cap have always said our generation Superman is now Captain America, and we're not afraid at all at letting Captain America speak his mind, and even at some points having fairly extensive monologues. And like there are genuine, like I'm a genuine fan of that character, and he's still my favorite Avenger, hard stop. So like the idea that like Captain America is a better Superman than Superman is kind of ridiculous to me, but that's where we're at now.
I mean, heck, Vision's a better Superman than Superman, and that guy's barely in a full movie's worth of screen time.
Yeah.
No, Bruce, you could just go get the thing by yourself and then come back.
But it's more tension if he's following him that whole way and blasting at him with lasers. And this is just, I don't know, like this, just not at all fun or dynamic to watch.
It will get briefly a little bit fun when Wonder Woman shows up, but for the most part, just I don't know, because a lot of people who even dislike both of these movies will cite the action as a positive, and I'm like, I don't know. Across two movies, we've had one action scene that I'd
This
call
is
a
one of my favorite shots in the movie.
yeah. That's I liked that we saw that. I like that we really get like an up close, like significant example of how being near the sun like heals him.
Yeah, that's one of the most epic shots in the movie. If I ever end up doing a DC trivia video, that shot will certainly be in there.
Bruce, your hands were not gonna stop the laser.
Yeah, this theme, man, it's pretty epic. I like it a lot.
Yeah. I wish that she was an actual character in this movie so I could find this more satisfying. Like, I can't help but always think when we get to this climax of just how screwed over all this was by the second trailer, and like this reveal and Doomsday's reveal, and like basically this entire movie in microcosm is there in that second trailer. That is exactly how you don't want to market your movie.
I mean, this isn't even a Last of Us 2 situation where it was leaked. They straight up just that was the official trailer. They put it out.
Yeah.
And they were like, "Don't worry, Doomsday is not the end of our movie, even though he is, and you guys can totally see through our BS."
And it's like sometimes people will say that about other trailers and it won't be true. Is like the whole movie's given away in the trailer. In this one, it really was. If you watch the trailer, you've watched like the 5 second videos equivalent of this movie. And like you never want to do that because now I'm just like, oh, well, this movie's bloated and too long and it's filled with padding. I really should have just not even bothered and stuck with the trailer.
Well, see that, yeah, I don't. I think you're going too far there, and I don't agree with that. Um, but like you saw that trailer and you suddenly were able to glean the pacing of the entire movie. Like, yeah, no, but I
Well, I
like
mean, think
it's not
about
like
it.
we were.
What's not in that trailer is all the like nonsensical fluff stuff. It's the bullet subplot. It's like all of the little minutia of Lex's plan. And like we can't say like it didn't give us any of the
There's
characters
still
stuff.
no way to know exactly what the movie's gonna be until you see the movie. Really, like
No, but
you
I
can cut
feel
a
like
bad you can cut a bad trailer to a movie. You can cut a good one to just depending on the footage that you have, and like like I saw the trailer, was really impressed, and then just wasn't impressed with the overall movie.
See, like this
But
part
like
is
I think Mark,
bad. Like Clark and Diana like tag teaming on Doomsday is cool. I wish it wasn't
yeah,
so
that's
like
pretty.
gray and blah, but it's not bad.
I mean, I don't need every movie to be colorful either. That's a complaint lobbed at the Marvel movies that I find really pretentious and obnoxious. Um, I mean, especially because it's not the boys where it's literally like let's take a objective and somewhat simple approach at what if superheroes were real in real life, but it is essentially real life but with superpowered people. Um, we're not going to go out of our way to throw in a bunch that wouldn't just actually be in the real world versus something like Guardians because you're in space, so you can be more colorful with that. But like I don't feel like those movies aren't oversaturated in gray like Man of Steel and this is.
Yeah. And like it's not even just that I like have an inherent need for this kind of material to be colorful. Would I like it if like our first big budget like live action scene of the Trinity fighting together was colorful? Yeah. But also it's just the way that this looks, it can be kind of hard to tell what's going on sometimes just because Doomsday is gray and the background is gray and everything's either gray or red with the fire.
I mean, I don't really agree with that. I can perfectly make out everything that's going on in this sequence just fine. But that comes down to editing and how you shoot it, which is
Yeah.
a bigger problem with earlier Nolan movies. Is that his fight scenes with Batman are really rapidly edited because he can't really do action. Um, that's really not his thing. I mean, he did a lot better with Inception. I'll give him that. But for those first two Batman movies, his actual Batman fights are pretty lackluster.
I like I like that as soon as Doomsday notices the Bruce is there, Bruce is like, I should not be here.
I'm out. And like a few minutes earlier, he's literally just spectating and watching Wonder Woman and Superman fight because that's all he can do.
Which that's unfortunate because what he
And
should
I hate this. Superman doesn't even know exactly where this. Actually, no, because like he's able to sense Lewis, and that's how he finds the spear. But Lewis shouldn't have even known where the heck the spear was,
wasn't she the one
unless
who killed him in
wait
the
no,
water?
yeah, never mind. She was the one that put it in the first place. But I remember like something on with the spear where like a character shouldn't know where it is, but knows where it is. I'm having a hard time remembering exactly what that was now, or maybe that was just a thought I had in the theater.
What Batman should be doing in this scene is strategizing because like Diana and Clark are both kind of just blunt instruments at this point. You don't have to force him to be a part of the action. He should be coordinating things.
This plays almost like a I don't know, like any major death in like imagine if Iron Man had actually died in that scene in Infinity War when he gets stabbed and everyone was so shocked and tearing up and crying.
Yep.
And this this movie wants me to care about Superman dying here. And I remember sitting in the theater and thinking, are you guys serious? Like I couldn't care less. Like you've done literally nothing to get me invested in this character.
General
His
audience
relationship with
General audiences cared more about the blue-skinned side character with a big red fin on his head dying.
yeah, Yandu got tears out of people in this. That's like his relationship with Lois is pretty toxic and creepy and kind of mortifying when you think about it. Um, and that's all he really has connecting him to humanity. Both of his parents I mean, his mom a lot less so, but his parents kind of suck. Um, and they're not traditional Kents. So it's like, what is? Why should I care about this Superman? What's investing me to this character?
This is also a
Not
thought that's just occurring to me now, which is like you compare Yondu and you compare like the death of Tony Stark, where it's
I
like,
kind of like the Frankenstein's monster score here.
yeah, I
Sounds
do.
very Frankenstein's monster esque.
But like compare some other deaths in like comic book movies and like the character dies and then you look back at the story and it seems like thematically it's building to like this person's time is done. Like they die with this sense of accomplishment because the story has put them into a position where really that's the only thing that was left to do with them. This movie doesn't feel like a movie that's building to Superman's death at all. It feels super obligatory. Like we have Doomsday here, so we have to do the death of Superman. Like at no point in this movie am I like, we're getting Clark Kent to a place where his character can have this finality. It really is too sudden. And I still can't just help but think that, like, it's kind of weird that Wonder Woman's just here when she really hasn't been a character in this movie prior to the last 5 minutes.
And even still, she's not really a character. I can't begin to see a lot about her, what her motivations are. Um,
Yeah, like, she,
I
she,
mean, you can
she
kind of glean her personality based off of her interaction with Bruce, but
there's
for the
not
most
too much
part,
to glean. And, like, she and
yeah, not
Superman
that
had no relationship. Like, we're getting, like, these meaningful reaction shots from her. And, like, she brings the body down. It's like, who are you?
much. Scene was not in the theatrical cut either. I think we're about to hint at stuff. Show Steppenwolf here, or like a hologram of him or something.
Yeah, this was actually the clip that they put on YouTube to, like, advertise the Ultimate Edition.
And uh, yeah, that's just a sleeping movie. I saw that movie with a friend of mine, and his girlfriend. I was kind of the third wheel, and he was like, "That was a great movie, right?" When we got to the end, and I was like, "Sure, yeah." Like I didn't want to rain in his parade because he seemed to really enjoy it, and I just like that movie in a lot of ways feels way too reactionary, but also like it has a really faulty foundation to begin with, and the story that it's telling is really generic, and the villain's really generic, and the Flash is awful, and I'm not with that movie kind of at all. And like we finally get classic Superman kind of at the end, but when we first see him, he's really kind of still fascist and vitriolic and trying to kill all the Justice Leaguers for no reason other than like I don't even know. Like his mental state is muddled, and the only reason he comes back is because of like that whole movie is just it's not great. Like in a lot of ways, it's more easy to follow than this movie. Like it's somewhat more like actually coherent, but it's I don't know. We definitely got a not great sequel, I guess, to this movie or like the Justice League movie they were building to. Um, didn't even end up involving a lot of the stuff put in this movie. So a
But
lot of this setup just amounts to nothing.
I'm really torn on like which movie I think is worse between this and Justice League, just because the problematic elements of this one are so all consuming, whereas comparatively Justice League is just kind of this harmless, schlocky, bad movie. But then I try to think, is there anything that I like in Justice League the way that I like Ben Affleck's performance here, or like I like that one action scene in a vacuum? And I genuinely can't think of anything. So like Justice League has less good in it, but it also has less overwhelming badness, in my opinion.
I think I tend to agree with you there, but I have to go back and watch that movie again. Um,
And like
it was really disappointing for me.
I feel so bad
Who
because
definitely
Amy Adams is giving a good performance also, but I don't care about Lois in this scene. I don't feel bad for her.
I don't either. uh, like this is supposed to have the Tony and Endgame effect, and it could not be further from that.
Honestly. And they're really trying to sell it so hard. But it's just you guys
Yeah,
didn't do
the
the legwork to get me to care about
no.
Clark first.
Uh, there's something really terrifying about this. Uh, this. I mean, were you even gonna? I imagine that's the kind of Superman that wouldn't even. He would give her the ring and say, "You're going to marry me."
Like he would
What
propose,
choice do you have? I'm Superman.
and Lois would be like shifty eyed, like, what do I do? I can't say no. He'd go insane.
He'd kill me with his laser eyes. That's the really disturbing thing about this incarnation of Superman is the little characterization we give him. It is clear that he would actually completely fall apart and go insane without Lois.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like
And
that's
he'd be
also
a
part of the problem with this, which is he's dead, and like because there's no other like big existential threats as far as we know, I don't feel bad for the rest of the world. It's like they suddenly, like Batman, I guess, on a light switch decided we like him now because he saved us again. But the world is probably better off without Superman in it than it was with him. Is that short lady supposed to be the I'm sorry, sir, I just thought he was really hot lady from the end of Man of Steel?
I think so.
Which that line was ridiculous.
As many things in these movies are. I don't have anything else to say. Like I'm not
Oh
this
hey,
movie's not good and huh?
I didn't realize before that that was Pete. But yeah, no, you're right. Like it's we still got one more scene of odd Lex Luthor-y nonsense. But yeah, no, it's this.
I hate this exchange.
Yeah,
Like
no, I don't like.
we suddenly act like this was classic Superman, and Batman's like this ideal, and he was an idol, and people looked up to him, and like, what is this scene? It doesn't belong in the movie they made.
I don't like how we end this. I don't like. Oh, why do you want us all to get together? And he's like, just a feeling. It's like I thought I thought part of the point here was that you're not supposed to like go looking for a fight just based on a hunch. Like that was your whole problem throughout this movie. Is like, oh man, I'm scared of Superman. I better like preemptively work as hard as I can to take him down. And here, based on a dream slash hallucination, you're like, I feel like we gotta get some people ready to fight some more guys. It's like I guess we just didn't learn anything. Yeah, no, it's really occurring to me on this viewing just how hard we were leaning into everyone has some kind of problem with Superman. This feels super unearned. Like these people here in the crowd, like bawling their eyes out over Superman. Where were you guys throughout the rest of the movie? When absolutely everyone was just taking a dump on him. No one was on Superman's side except for Lois, pretty much. We're gonna fight. Why? Because reasons. Okay, so I'm fairly certain Bruce never finds out that it's Luthor who's directly causing the stabbings because of the brand. So him not branding Luthor is him like being like, okay, I'm gonna let you live. I'm not gonna like brand people, death sentence them anymore. Why? You killed people in the last action scene that you had. Is it really just that Superman dying is what made you be like, okay, I'm not gonna kill criminals anymore? I'm not really sure how that tracks. You still there?
Yeah,
Hmm. Yeah, I'm trying to keep this
I
going, but
just
if you guys can't tell, we've kind of exhausted all we have to say about this movie. I feel kind of bad because I'd hoped coming into this that I would have at least a little more positive to say because I do kind of like, if nothing else, I admire that Zack Snyder really did get his vision onto the screen and like this is a movie. It's not a boring movie for the most part. It's not a generic movie. It is very much its own animal and I appreciate it on like a fascinating to think about level, but it's just none of it is very good. It's just I can't be too positive about it because it's just not great decisions.
and for better or worse, we're kind of done with this weirdly. Like the only residual things we still have from Zack Snyder's vision is an ongoing Wonder Woman and Aquaman. Um, but like we've already dropped Ben Affleck. Um,
As far
and
as
Henry
we
Cavill
know,
is more than
Henry
willing.
Cavill's been dropped.
Yeah, and he's more than willing to come back, but I guess they separated themselves from this incarnation of the character. But they kept Aquaman, they've kept Wonder Woman, and those are still ongoing. It's really awkward. And we've got a new Batman movie in the works that counts as not even tied to this continuity, and we've got a new actor, and we did a standalone Joker movie like that. This like DC is a lot more messy than Marvel right now. Not even that they necessarily even need to have a proper cinematic universe like Marvel does. Um, but it just would have been nice to have some degree of consistency. Like if we're not gonna commit to doing a cinematic universe, then just I don't know, don't do one.
Well, I mean, clearly the problem that we had from the beginning was, as we've mentioned multiple times by now, Snyder was just not the right guy for this material. He doesn't have enough affection for the DC universe or characters to have been put in charge of like creating the world that our DC universe is going to populate. That was just a mistake from day one. And so as we've distanced ourselves from this movie, we've distanced ourselves from the idea of needing all of these to connect together necessarily. And that's probably for the best. Just because whether or not we reference like the casting of this movie explicitly, whether we kept Ben Affleck on or not, everything that continued to be connected was going to be in the shadow of this film. So honestly, it's just, I think it's for the best where we're at right now, where things are in kind of this limbo of, is Birds of Prey connected to Shazam? Are either of them connected to Aquaman? Who knows? They're just their own movies, and we don't have to kind of like suffer through the association of these are all kind of in Snyder's world.
And while I am very excited about the cast and the director they've put together for that new Batman movie, um, I think it is still pretty unfortunate that we didn't get the proper standalone Batman film that would have followed this movie with Ben Affleck, because everything I heard about that project sounded awesome and really ambitious, and I was really curious to see if they could have pulled it off, because he was supposed to write the script, direct, and star in that movie as Batman. And Deathstroke was supposed to be the main. He has this setup cameo at the end of Justice League, and it was going to be Joe Manganiello. And, like I was really really excited and interested in that project because I love Ben Affleck as a storyteller as well. The town was great. The girl was really good. Um, so I was interested to see what his Batman movie would have looked like, and now we'll most certainly never get that.
Yeah, watching that project sort of like disintegrate before our eyes over the course of like a year was unfortunate. It was really, really sad, and I felt bad for Ben Affleck. Just even coming out of this movie to look forward to that movie and to see it have like so much promise, and then just he has to step down as director, but don't worry, he's still acting in it. And they're not using his script anymore, but for real, guys, the movie's still getting made and he is still starring. And then he's not even starring anymore, and it's like it's a completely different movie, but maybe they're still using parts of his script, and now we're just where we're at, where it's a completely different beast, and he doesn't seem to want to have anything to do with this property anymore. And it really sucks. It really feels bad that that had to happen. This is gonna sound stupid. But remind me, was there a post-credit scene to this movie?
No, I don't think there is. I think that's the last thing that we're left with. We're left with like Lois dropping the dirt on the coffin, and then the dirt like starting to move and like levitate. It's like, oh, he's alive. So all that time we spent pretending like he's dead was pretty pointless.
Huh. So yeah, I don't know. We might as well end it there. Like final thoughts. This is a really really bad movie. And like obviously I mean that in terms of my opinion. If you like this movie, if you love this movie, honestly I envy you. I wish I could find more positive in this movie than it just being a really weird experiment because like I don't think I'm ever going to bother to watch this again. I think 4 viewings total is enough for me. I really don't get anything out of this on repeat viewings. I'm glad that we did this just because it's good to have my thoughts moment to moment like documented somewhere. But I don't find much of value in this film. And I don't know. I'm kind of astonished that it got onto the big screen in the way that it is. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, like
I'm comfortable with
people.
this being my goodbye to this film.
Yeah, if I ever go back to this, it'll be for it'll be to make a tribute video for DC, like a compilation tribute video of their movies. Um, and that Batman scene in the warehouse is good enough that I gotta include that alone, if nothing else from this movie, and the Superman shot. But yeah, like this was massively disappointing as someone who spent half of his boot camp waiting to see this film, and like my first experience in San Diego was like being there in Hollywood and announce this movie, and they had Lawrence Fishburne come out and read a passage from the Dark Knight Returns comic, and then the lights went black, and they showed the logo, and everyone lost their shit. It was it was insane, and then to finally get the movie and it turned out the way it was just really unfortunate. Um, but not the end of the world. DC is in a much better place now when this movie came out. Um, Shazam was okay. It kind of sort of underperformed, but was very well received critically. Wonder Woman was a smash hit. Aquaman was a smash hit. Um, and it looked like, as far as we can tell, the sequel to Wonder Woman looks really, really solid. So I'm excited to see what they do moving forward. I'm interested in seeing what the new Batman movies look like because again, I love that cast and the director. So yeah, DC is off doing better things now. They're in a much better place. So
Yeah.
yeah, I guess that wraps things up. Thanks for listening, guys.
Yeah, I hope that if you happen to be listening to this and you do like this movie that this wasn't too much of a slog for you to get through. So yeah, leave your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for listening to us drone on for 3+ hours. And yeah, see you in the next one.